For thousands of years, the Jedi had mapped its currents, charted its eddies, understood its rhythms. The Sith had bent it to their will, corrupted it, weaponized it, but both orders agreed on one fundamental truth. Everything that exists within the Force. Everything living could be sensed. Everything with power left a mark in the cosmic tapestry. They were wrong. The first sign of wrongness appeared above Nar Shaddaa, the smuggler's moon, in the year 1 ABY. A tear in reality itself, not a hyperspace exit signature, not a spatial anomaly that registered on any known scanner. The tear was crimson, the color of arterial spray, and it screamed with a frequency that made nearby huts uncomfortable in ways their species hadn't experienced in millennia. Something fell through, something that looked vaguely like a ship if ships could bleed. The wreckage carved a burning trench through the Corellian sector of the moon's endless cityscape, demolishing 3 cantinas, 2 spice dens, and a hut pleasure barge before embedding itself in the side of a decommissioned Republic-era prison tower. Alarms wailed. Bounty hunters investigated, hoping for salvage. What they found was a crashed vessel that seemed to be constructed from equal parts metal and something organic that pulsed wetly in the neon-soaked darkness. The ship's hull split open like a mouth, and Alucard stepped out into the Star Wars galaxy. He stood in the wreckage, adjusting his red duster coat and wide-brimmed hat, and took a long, theatrical breath through lungs that hadn't needed air in over 5 centuries. The smell of Nar Shaddaa hit him: industrial pollution, alien sweat, the particular musk of criminal enterprise conducted in tight spaces. His lips split into a grin that showed far too many teeth. "Well," he said to nobody in particular, his voice a rich baritone with a mockingly elegant British accent. "This isn't London, definitely not Protestant enough, not nearly enough fog or self-loathing." He tilted his head, orange-tinted glasses reflecting the garish neon lights. "But I can work with this." A Rhodian bounty hunter, emboldened by spice or stupidity, approached with a blaster leveled at Alucard's head. "Don't move, Chaka. That's salvage rights, and you're trespassing on." Alucard looked at him. Just looked. The ancient predator behind those glasses focused its full attention on the Rhodian, and every instinct the alien possessed millions of years of evolved survival mechanisms screamed at him to run. The Rhodian's finger trembled on the trigger. "You were saying something," Alucard said pleasantly. "Please, finish your threat. I do so enjoy hearing what people plan to do before I demonstrate why biology is more of a suggestion for me." The Rhodian fired. The blaster bolt caught Alucard square in the chest, burning through his coat and into the flesh beneath. Alucard looked down at the smoking hole, then back up at the Rhodian. His grin widened impossibly. "Huh. That actually stung a little. What an adorable little weapon." He pulled out his own pistol, the Kazul, a hand cannon that looked entirely too large for practical use, and pointed it casually at the Rhodian's center mass. "Let me show you how we do firearms where I'm from." The Kazul's report was deafening in the enclosed space. The Rhodian ceased to exist from the waist up, his lower half standing for a confused moment before toppling over. The round continued through 2 walls behind him before finally stopping. "Oh, I am going to enjoy this vacation," Alucard said, holstering the weapon. The hole in his chest had already sealed, flesh knitting back together with wet, organic sounds that shouldn't happen to anything claiming to be humanoid. Around him, the various criminals, spice addicts, and general lowlifes of Nar Shaddaa's underworld took in the scene. The impossible ship, the regenerating man-shaped creature, the excessive violence. They reached the only logical conclusion. They ran. Alucard stepped fully into the smuggler's moon, his boots crunching on debris that might have been building material or might have been someone's pelvis he neither knew nor cared. Above, the moon's artificial sky flickered with advertising holograms in a dozen languages he didn't recognize. Ships screamed past on repulsor engines, their ion trails painting temporary scars across his vision. "Right then," he said, pulling out a datapad-like device that had somehow survived the dimensional crossing. It sparked, displayed incomprehensible text, then died completely. Navigation is out. No idea where I am. No way home that I can immediately identify." He paused, considering. I should probably be concerned about that. He wasn't. Instead, Alucard began walking deeper into Nar Shadar's neon-soaked labyrinth, leaving a trail of bloody footprints that faded to ash behind him. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Security forces were coming whatever passed for law on this anarchist's paradise. He could hear their heartbeats, rapid with adrenaline and fear-induced bravado. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. His grin stretched wider. A whole new galaxy to explore, he mused, his voice dripping with dark amusement. New blood, new violence, new authorities to disappoint. He pulled both pistols now, the jackal joining its twin in his hands, and unless I'm very much mistaken, absolutely nobody here knows what a vampire is. Thunder rumbled in the distance, not weather, but the sound of capital ships moving in low orbit. Alucard looked up through the maze of buildings and walkways, catching a glimpse of a massive star destroyer passing overhead. Its hull painted the sterile white of the Galactic Empire. "Oh," he breathed, something like joy entering his voice. "There's a fascist regime. Please tell me they're British. I do miss having proper villains to play with." The security forces rounded the corner, a mix of species he didn't recognize, carrying weapons that glowed with charged energy. They shouted orders in multiple languages, all demanding his surrender. Alucard spread his arms wide, pistols held loosely, and laughed. It was not a sane sound. "Gentlemen, ladies, and whatever that thing with tentacles is," he called out. "Welcome to the beginning of your very worst night. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you." He paused, tilting his head. "What's the Force? Is it like cocaine?" "I hope it's like cocaine." The security forces opened fire, and Nar Shadar's criminal underworld learned its first lesson about Alucard. When something doesn't die after the first 100 blaster bolts, it's probably not going to die after the next 1,000 either. The vampire walked into the storm of energy fire, laughing all the way. Canon Jarrus had learned to trust his instincts. Years of surviving the purge, of evading Inquisitors, and keeping his connection to the Force hidden, had honed his senses to a razor's edge. He could feel danger approaching from systems away, could sense the Imperial presence like a cold weight on his chest, could track Force sensitives through the cosmic web that bound all living things together, which is why the complete and utter absence he felt on Nar Shaddaa terrified him more than any Inquisitor ever had. He stood in the cargo hold of the Ghost, his ship currently docked in one of the moon's countless landing bays, and pressed his hand against the bulkhead as if the metal could ground him. His Padawan, Ezra Bridger, noticed immediately. "Master, you okay?" The kid was getting better at reading him, which was both gratifying and occasionally inconvenient. "Something's wrong," Kanan said quietly. It's like a void, not dark side that I could understand. This is something else. Where there should be something in the Force, there's just..." He struggled for words. "Nothing. An empty space that moves. Maybe it's just Nar Shaddaa," Ezra offered. "This whole moon is basically a crime scene. Hard to sense anything specific through all the suffering and spice." Kanan shook his head. "No, this is different. It's like trying to sense someone who doesn't exist, who can't exist." He turned to his Padawan. "Have you ever looked at something and had the Force just refuse to acknowledge it's there?" Ezra's expression shifted to something more serious. That's not possible. Everything exists in the Force." Master Yoda said. "I know what Yoda said." Kanan moved to the holoterminal, pulling up local news feeds. "But right now the Force is telling me there's a hole in reality walking around down there, and I need to know what it is before it becomes our problem." The terminal flickered to life, displaying a cascade of urgent bulletins. Most were the standard Nar Shaddaa fair gang violence, spice busts, property damage, but one stood out. Emergency alert from the Corellian sector. Mass casualty event. Security forces decimated. Witnesses reporting regenerating humanoid and impossible weapons. Imperial investigation pending. Kanan felt his stomach drop. When did this happen? 43 minutes ago. The ship's droid, Chopper, beeped irritably. While you were meditating and being useless. Show me surveillance footage. What appeared on screen shouldn't have been possible. A tall figure in red walked through blaster fire like it was rain, his body absorbing impacts that should have killed him instantly. Holes appeared in his flesh and sealed seconds later. He moved with a speed that made the footage blur, and where he went, security forces fell in pieces. His laughter carried over the audio feed, unhinged, delighted, theatrical, and in the Force, Kanan felt absolutely nothing. The figure on screen existed in reality but not in the cosmic web. It was as if someone had cut a man-shaped hole in the universe itself. What is that thing? Ezra breathed. I don't know. Kanan watched the figure, Alucard, though he didn't know the name yet, catch a blaster bolt with his hand, examine it curiously, then throw it back at its source with lethal force. But whatever it is, the Force doesn't recognize it as alive. Undead? Ezra suggested. Like those Night Sister zombies Sabine told us about? Those still registered in the Force, corrupted, twisted, but present. Kanan closed the feed. This is something else entirely. Something from outside our galaxy's rules. Chopper beeped a warning. Kanan didn't need the translation, he could feel it now. Imperial presence, moving fast and purposeful. Star destroyers repositioning in orbit. Troop transports descending toward the Corellian sector. They know, Kanan muttered. The Empire detected it too, probably scrambling to figure out what it is before it becomes a threat to their control. Should we leave? Ezra asked, hand drifting to his lightsaber. This feels like the kind of situation where not being here is the smart move. Kanan wanted to agree. Every tactical instinct he possessed screamed at him to fire up the Ghost's engines and jump to hyperspace before Imperial attention turned their way. But something held him back, not the Force, which remained maddeningly silent on the subject, but simple human curiosity mixed with growing dread. Not yet, he said finally. If the Empire is interested in this thing, we need to know why. Could be a weapon, could be something they're trying to recruit. He checked his blaster, made sure his lightsaber was concealed. I'm going down there. That's insane, Ezra protested. You just said the Force can't sense this thing. That means no warning if it comes after you. No precognition. You'd be fighting blind, which is exactly why I need to see it for myself. Kanan pulled on his jacket, covering the lightsaber at his hip. The Empire learned to hunt Jedi because they understand how we use the Force. This thing? It operates outside those rules. If it becomes a weapon against Force users. He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. Ezra grabbed his own jacket. Then I'm coming with you. No, you stay with the ship. If this goes wrong, you get the Ghost out of here and warn the others. Kanan gripped the kid's shoulder. I mean it, Ezra. Some things are more important than heroics. The Padawan looked like he wanted to argue, but eventually nodded. May the Force be with you. I'm not sure the Force knows what to do with this one, Kanan admitted. He descended the boarding ramp, immediately hit by Nar Shadar's oppressive atmosphere, the smell of burning ozone from overworked engines, the press of thousands of desperate beings trying to survive, the constant background hum of criminal enterprise, and underneath it all, that void. That impossible empty space that moved through the Force like a shark through water, present in reality but absent in the cosmic consciousness. Kanan made his way toward the Corellian sector, keeping to shadows and side passages, using techniques Hera had taught him for urban infiltration. Around him, Nar Shadar's residents whispered in fearful tones. The rumors had already spread, taking on mythical proportions. A demon that couldn't die. A monster that laughed at blaster fire. A creature that the Force itself refused to acknowledge. He passed a medical station where the wounded from the initial encounter were being treated. The injuries were brutal, clean amputations from weapons far more powerful than standard blasters, trauma consistent with superhuman strength, and psychological damage that manifested as catatonic staring and repeated muttering about red eyes, and it kept smiling. One survivor, a Twi'lek security officer with his arm in a regeneration cast, grabbed Kanan as he passed. "Don't go there," the alien hissed. "Don't go to the sector. That thing, it's not natural. Shots go through it. Blades cut it. Nothing stops it. And it enjoys it. By all the gods, it enjoys the violence." "I'll be careful," Kanan promised, gently extracting himself. "It won't matter," the Twi'lek said hollowly. "Careful doesn't mean anything to something that can't die." Kanan continued deeper into the Corellian sector, the void in the Force growing stronger with each step. Not stronger as in more powerful, stronger as in more present. A blind spot that his senses kept sliding off, unable to find purchase. It was profoundly disturbing, like trying to look at something his brain refused to process. He rounded a corner and stopped. The street ahead was a battlefield. Bodies or pieces of bodies littered the Duracrete. Blast marks scored every surface. A security speeder burned fitfully, its repulsors whining their death throes. And in the center of the carnage, sitting casually on a pile of rubble with his legs crossed, was the figure from the footage. Alucard looked up as Kanan approached, those orange-tinted glasses reflecting the firelight. His smile was all teeth and dark amusement. "Well, well," the vampire purred. "What have we here? You walk different from the others. Carry yourself like someone who knows how to fight." He tilted his head, studying Kanan with predatory interest. "But there's something else, something you're trying very hard to hide." Kanan kept his hand away from his lightsaber, tried to project calm confidence. "I'm just a concerned citizen wondering why there's a massacre in my neighborhood." "Liar," Alucard said cheerfully. "You're far too interesting to be a citizen, and you're doing this fascinating thing where you keep trying to sense me? Is that the word? There's this tickling feeling at the back of my consciousness, like someone's trying to touch something that isn't there." His grin widened impossibly. "You're one of those space wizards, aren't you? The ones with the laser swords?" Kanan's blood went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, please. I've been undead for 500 years. I know when someone's trying to use supernatural senses on me." Alucard stood, his movements fluid and wrong, like reality had to adjust to accommodate him rather than the other way around. "The question is, why can't you sense me? Everyone back home could feel my presence. The blessed, the damned, the merely gifted, they all knew when I was near." He stepped closer. "But you? Your magic just slides right off. It's actually quite refreshing." "What are you?" Kanan asked, abandoning pretense. "Excellent question. I'm a vampire, a creature of the night, a professional monster. I've been called the Nosferatu, the no-life king, that asshole who won't stay dead." Alucard spread his arms. "I've had many names, worn many faces, drunk blood from thousands of throats across 5 centuries. And now, apparently, I'm in a completely different galaxy where nobody knows what I am." He leaned in close, and Kanan fought every instinct to step back. "So tell me, Space Wizard," Alucard whispered, "in this galaxy of yours, exactly how long do you think it'll take before I become legend?" The cantina called itself the Spliced Deck, which Alucard found appropriately dishonest for an establishment that served watered-down liquor to criminals. He'd let the Space Wizard Kanan, he'd called himself before, wisely retreating escape with his life and most of his sanity intact. The Jedi's inability to sense him through whatever cosmic telephone network they used had been delicious, but ultimately the conversation had grown boring once the man refused to draw his laser sword. Now Alucard wanted a drink, information, and possibly to murder someone, ideally in that order, though he was flexible. The cantina's interior was a cacophony of alien species, all of them radiating the particular moral flexibility that came from living in a place where laws were suggestions and murder was a business expense. Perfect. The bartender, a 4-armed basilisk with tusks and an attitude, looked up as Alucard entered, took in the blood-stained red coat and predatory smile, and immediately reached for something under the bar. We don't want trouble, the bartender rumbled. Excellent news, Alucard said, sliding onto a bar stool with theatrical grace. Neither do I. I want information, strong alcohol, and for everyone in this establishment to continue breathing. Well, most of you. I'm flexible on that last point. He pulled out several credit chips he'd looted from the security forces. I assume these are valuable. The bartender eyed the chips, then Alucard, calculating odds. Those are Imperial credits. Worth something, yeah. But if you're Empire, I'm not Empire. I'm not anything. I'm not even from this galaxy, as it turns out. Alucard pushed the chips forward, which brings me to my first question. Where exactly am I? And why does everyone keep talking about the Force like it's a real thing and not just a catchy name for a band? A Rodian at the end of the bar laughed a chittering, unpleasant sound. You're on Nar Shaddaa, Shaka, Smuggler's Moon, and if you don't know about the Force, you're either stupid or from the Outer Rim's ass end. Alucard turned to look at him, that predatory focus making the Rodian's laughter die in his throat. I'm from somewhere considerably further than that, but please, educate me. I do so enjoy learning before I eviscerate. The bartender, sensing potential profit in keeping the dangerous stranger calm, poured something that glowed faintly purple. The Force is the energy field that binds the galaxy together. It's what the Jedi used to keep the peace before the Empire hunted them down. Now the Emperor and Vader, his enforcer, use it to maintain control. Alucard sipped the drink. It tasted like industrial solvent mixed with fruit juice and regret. Terrible. He downed the entire glass. So, it's magic. You have space magic, and people who can use it are either extinct peacekeepers or fascist enforcers. Fascinating. Do continue. There's not much to continue, the bartender said, pouring another. Empire controls most of the galaxy. Rebellion tries to fight back. Hutts control places like this where the Empire doesn't bother. He gestured to the cantina's occupants. We're all just trying to survive between the three. Hutts, Alucard repeated. Giant slug creatures who run criminal empires. I met one's security force earlier. Well, met might be generous. Disassembled is more accurate. He turned on his stool, addressing the cantina at large. So which one of you works for the local Hutt? I have some questions about territorial authority and whether they'd be interested in hiring. The cantina went very quiet. Several patrons edged toward exits. A massive hook in the corner stood up, muscles rippling under scarred green skin. You killed Gracchus's security force. The Hutt put a bounty on you before you even left the crash site. 50,000 credits. Only 50,000? Alucard sounded genuinely offended. I'm worth at least 100,000. My dental work alone is priceless. He set down his glass. And you're the bounty hunter who's going to collect it, I presume? The Hook pulled out a massive vibro axe. You're dead, off-worlder. Oh, I've been dead for 5 centuries, darling. You'll have to be more specific. Alucard stood, adjusting his hat. But I appreciate the effort. It's been almost an hour since someone tried to kill me. I was starting to feel neglected. The Hook charged. He was fast for something that large, the vibro axe humming with enough energy to cleave durasteel. Alucard didn't move. The axe came down in a perfect arc, splitting him from crown to groin in a spray of blood that painted the cantina's grimy floor. The Hook grinned in triumph. Alucard's bisected halves turned to look at each other, then back at the Hook. Oh dear, both mouths said simultaneously. That's going to stain. The halves liquefied into shadows, flowing together and reforming into Alucard's whole body in the span of a heartbeat. He stood there, completely intact, his coat not even torn. The blood on the floor evaporated into crimson mist. My turn, Alucard said pleasantly. What happened next was educational for everyone present. The Hook discovered that superhuman strength meant nothing against something that could phase through matter. The cantina's other patrons learned that Alucard could move faster than their eyes could track. The bartender, who'd been contemplating calling more security, decided that serving drinks and staying very quiet was the optimal survival strategy. When it was over, the Hoke was still alive, barely missing several non-essential limbs but conscious enough to scream. Alucard crouched beside him, pulling out a cloth to wipe blood from his glasses. "Now then," the vampire said conversationally, ignoring the screaming. "You're going to tell me where this Gracchus the Hutt conducts business. Then you're going to explain why he thought 50,000 credits was an appropriate price for my head. And if you're very lucky and very informative, I might even reattach one of your arms before you bleed out." The Hoke, all previous bravado evaporated, talked very quickly. 10 minutes later, Alucard walked through the neon-soaked streets of Nar Shaddaa toward Gracchus's palace, leaving the Cantina's survivors to contemplate their life choices. The Hutt's compound was impossible to miss, a gaudy monument to excess built into the moon's superstructure, surrounded by guards carrying weapons that looked slightly more impressive than the standard fare. The guards saw him coming. They'd obviously received word about the regenerating maniac. They opened fire immediately, a disciplined volley that would have shredded a normal being. Alucard walked through the blaster fire like it was confetti. "Points for enthusiasm," he called out. "Minus points for effectiveness. Has anyone in this galaxy discovered that shooting the unkillable thing doesn't actually kill it?" He reached the first guard, grabbed the Gamorrean by his throat, and lifted him one-handed. "I'm here to speak with your employer about proper bounty etiquette and why lowball offers are personally insulting." He threw the guard through the compound's reinforced door, which crumpled like paper. "Also about job opportunities, if he's hiring." Inside the palace, Gracchus the Hutt lounged on his platform, surrounded by Twi'lek dancers and various toadies. The crime lord was massive, even for a Hutt, his bulk decorated with cybernetic implants and jewelry that probably cost more than a small starship. His eyes surprisingly intelligent for something that looked like an ambulatory slime mold focused on Alucard as the vampire entered. "So you're the one who's been killing my people," Gracchus rumbled in Huttese, which his protocol droid immediately translated. "Bold, coming here. Stupid, but bold." "I prefer confident in my immortality," Alucard replied, examining the palace with theatrical interest. "Lovely decor. Very dictator chic. The enslaved dancers are a nice touch, really commits to the whole absolute bastard aesthetic." He turned his attention to Gracchus. "Now, about that bounty, 50,000 credits? For someone who's killed, he counted on his fingers, approximately 200 of your employees in the last 3 hours. That's insulting. That's barely 250 credits per corpse. You want me to raise your bounty?" The protocol droid sounded confused, translating that. "I want you to either offer me a job or offer me a challenge, preferably both." Alucard spread his arms. "I'm new to this galaxy. I need income, entertainment, and detailed maps of where the fascists keep their military assets. You're a crime lord, surely you have all three." Gracchus studied him with those calculating eyes. "What makes you think I wouldn't just kill you where you stand? Because you're a businessman, not an idiot. And because I just walked through 200 guards like they were decorative." Alucard's grin was all teeth. "But if you'd like a demonstration of why hiring me is preferable to fighting me, I'm happy to oblige. I haven't killed anyone important yet today, and I'm feeling underappreciated." The Hutt was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed, a deep, flamey sound. "I like you. You're either insane or suicidal. Both, actually. It's part of my charm. Fine. I have a job." A rival Oruba the Hutt controls the Duros sector. His enforcers have been encroaching on my territory. Gracchus leaned forward. "Make an example of them. Publicly. Messily. If you succeed, we discuss employment. If you fail—" "I won't," Alucard interrupted. "Failure requires the possibility of death, and I stopped offering that option around the 15th century. He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. This empire everyone keeps mentioning, the fascists with the white armor and the Force wizards. How do they feel about creatures that exist outside their cosmic telephone network? The protocol droid translated Gracchus's response. They hunt anything they can't control, and they will absolutely come for you. Alucard's smile widened into something that shouldn't fit on a human face. Perfect. I was worried this vacation might get boring. He walked out of the palace, leaving Gracchus to contemplate whether he'd just hired an asset or unleashed a catastrophe. Behind him, the Hutt's intelligence officers were already sending encrypted messages. Notify the other cartels, warn the local Imperial garrison, and for the love of profit itself, don't engage the creature in red unless absolutely necessary. In the shadows of Nar Shadar's upper levels, an Imperial Inquisitor received those same intelligence reports and smiled coldly. The Grand Inquisitor would want to know about this force-blind entity, and if the rumors were true, if this creature truly existed outside the Force, then Lord Vader himself would take interest. The hunt was about to begin. The Grand Inquisitor stood aboard the Imperial Star Destroyer Sovereign, his pale hands clasped behind his back as he reviewed the intelligence reports for the third time. Around him, the bridge crew maintained their usual efficiency officers, monitoring scanner readouts, communications specialists coordinating with planetary garrisons, all of them carefully avoiding eye contact with the Pau'an, who served as the Emperor's chief Jedi hunter. The reports made no sense. That bothered him more than he cared to admit. A being that exists outside the Force, he murmured, yellow eyes scanning the surveillance footage again. The creature in red moved through blaster fire with casual disregard, regenerated from wounds that should have been instantly fatal, and displayed strength far beyond normal humanoid parameters. Yet in the Force, there was nothing. Not darkness, not light, not even the corrupted presence of the Night Sisters undead. Just absence. Lord Inquisitor. An officer approached with carefully measured steps. We've received confirmation from the Nar Shadar garrison. The entity has accepted employment from Gracchus the Hutt. Current location, Duros sector, engaging Oruba's security forces. Predictable. The Grand Inquisitor turned from the viewport. Criminal scum hiring other criminal scum. However, this provides an opportunity. He activated the holoterminal, and 4 figures shimmered into existence, his subordinates. The Inquisitors currently stationed throughout the Outer Rim. Brothers and sisters, we have a new priority target. The 5th brother, a massive Dawutin with a permanently scowling face, crossed his arms. The force-blind entity, I've seen the reports, doesn't seem that impressive. Heavy blasters, regeneration, nothing we haven't handled before. Your arrogance will be your undoing, the Grand Inquisitor said coldly. This creature is something new, something that shouldn't exist. The Force does not acknowledge it, which means our standard tactics, precognition, sensing emotions, tracking through the Force, will fail. The 7th sister, her face hidden behind her helmet, tilted her head. So we hunt it like any other, non-Force sensitive. Overwhelming firepower, tactical coordination, precisely. 5th brother, you will lead the operation. Take the 7th sister and 8th brother. Capture if possible. The Emperor will want to study this anomaly, but if it proves too dangerous. The Grand Inquisitor's thin lips curved into something resembling a smile. Orbital bombardment is authorized. The 5th brother grinned, showing too many teeth. Finally, something interesting. Alucard stood in the center of the Duros sector's main promenade, surrounded by 37 bodies in various states of disassembly, and contemplated his performance. Oruba's enforcers had been marginally more competent than the average security forces. They'd actually managed to coordinate their fire, use cover effectively, and one had even been clever enough to try a thermal detonator. That one had been fun. The explosion had vaporized Alucard completely, and the enforcers had celebrated for approximately 15 seconds before he reformed from the blast shadow and shot the celebration's ringleader through both kneecaps. Bit sloppy on the dismemberment, he muttered to himself, nudging a severed arm with his boot. Could have been more artistic. The Crimson Fucker would be disappointed in my lack of flourish. A ship descended from above, sleek, black, distinctly military in design. Imperial insignia marked its hull. Alucard watched it land with interest, noting the way civilians scattered like insects. Whatever this was, the locals feared it more than they feared him. That was almost insulting. The boarding ramp lowered, and 3 figures emerged. They wore black armor with red accents, carried spinning lightsaber weapons, and moved with the confident predatory grace of apex predators. Alucard could feel something radiating from them, not magic exactly, but close. The same energy the Jedi had possessed, but twisted, corrupted, sharpened into a weapon. Well, he said cheerfully. The Empire sends its space wizards. How thoughtful. The 5th brother stepped forward, his massive frame making the lightsaber look almost delicate in his hands. You are the entity designated as the Force-blind anomaly, by order of the Galactic Empire and the Emperor's Inquisitorius. You will surrender for detention and study. Alucard blinked behind his orange glasses. Then he started laughing, a sound that started low and built to something manic and delighted. Oh, that's adorable. He wiped an imaginary tear from his eye. You actually think you can detain me? You, with your little laser swords and your fascist fashion sense, think you can capture the no-life king? His laughter cut off abruptly, smile vanishing into something cold and ancient. Allow me to educate you about the hierarchy of predators. The 5th brother didn't wait for further conversation. He lunged, lightsaber spinning in a deadly arc designed to bisect Alucard at the waist. The 7th sister flanked right, her own blade humming. The 8th brother, a Terrellian Django jumper, used the Force to hurl debris from above. Alucard stood perfectly still until the last possible second, then moved. Not with the Force-enhanced speed of a Jedi, but with something faster, pure supernatural velocity that made reality blur. The 5th brother's lightsaber passed through empty air. Alucard reappeared behind the 7th sister, his casoul pressed against her helmet. Bang, he whispered. The round punched through the helmet's reinforced plating, through her skull, and out the other side in a spray of gore and sparking electronics. The 7th sister's body crumpled. The 5th brother roared, spinning with his double-bladed lightsaber. The weapon caught Alucard across the chest, the plasma blade burning through flesh and bone, the smell of cauterized vampire filling the air. Alucard looked down at the lightsaber embedded in his torso. Huh, that actually hurts. He grabbed the blade with his bare hand, ignoring the sizzling of his palm. Interesting technology. Contained plasma, I'm guessing, or some kind of exotic energy field. He yanked the lightsaber from the 5th brother's grip and examined it curiously while his chest wound knit itself back together. The 8th brother, hanging from an elevated walkway, extended his hand. Lightning arced from his fingertips, blue-white and crackling with dark side energy. It slammed into Alucard, coursing through his body, making his muscles spasm and his coat smoke. When the lightning stopped, Alucard was still standing. His clothes were scorched, his skin blackened in places, but he was very much alive, or undead. The distinction was becoming academic. Electricity, Alucard said conversationally. You know, the Catholic Church tried that back in the 1800s. Didn't work then either. He tossed the lightsaber back to the 5th brother, but I'll admit, yours has more punch. Do it again. I want to see if it'll actually kill me or just make my hair stand up. The 5th brother caught his weapon, and for the first time since becoming an Inquisitor, he felt something he'd thought the dark side had burned out of him. Uncertainty. This creature wasn't fighting like anything he'd encountered. It wasn't using the Force. It wasn't even using conventional tactics. It was simply existing in a way that violated every rule of combat he knew. What are you? The 5th brother demanded. I'm a vampire, Alucard replied, as if that explained everything. I drink blood, I don't age, I can't die, and I have a very particular set of skills that I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. He pulled out the jackal, the massive pistol gleaming in Nar Shaddaa's neon light. Now, shall we continue this delightful dance? Or would you prefer to run back to your emperor and tell him that his Inquisitors are woefully unprepared for threats that don't play by Force rules. The fifth brother made his decision. He reached for his comlink. "This is fifth brother. Target is beyond our capability." Requesting. Alucard shot the comlink out of his hand. "No, no, no. No calling for backup. That's cheating." He tilted his head. "Unless you're calling for more Inquisitors, I could use the practice." The first one went down a bit too easily. The eighth brother dropped from his perch, landing in a crouch, lightsaber ignited. "The seventh sister was my partner for 3 years, and now she's a cautionary tale about underestimating the competition," Alucard said. "Don't feel too bad. I've been killing people far more competent than you for 5 centuries. It's not personal, it's just what I am." What followed was less a fight and more a lesson in futility. The Inquisitors were skilled, trained by Vader himself in the ways of dark side combat. They could deflect blaster bolts, sense attacks before they came, augment their strength and speed with the Force. Against any normal opponent, they were unstoppable. But Alucard wasn't normal. Every time they cut him, he regenerated. Every time they predicted his movements through the Force, he simply didn't appear where they expected because the Force couldn't track him. When the eighth brother tried to crush him with telekinesis, Alucard laughed and shot him through both knees, then the elbows, then finally the head. The fifth brother found himself alone, surrounded by the corpses of his team and the slowly regenerating vampire who looked barely inconvenienced. "Last chance," Alucard offered. "Run. Tell your masters what you saw. Spread the word that something new has arrived in their galaxy, and it doesn't care about their Force, their empire, or their ability to throw lightning around." His smile was predatory. "Or stay, and I add you to my collection. Your choice." The fifth brother was many things: arrogant, brutal, loyal to the Empire, but he wasn't suicidal. He had seen what this creature could do, had watched it shrug off lightsaber wounds that should have been instantly fatal, had felt the complete absence where the Force should have warned him of danger. He ran. Alucard watched him go, then looked down at the bodies of the seventh sister and eighth brother. Shame. They had potential. He crouched beside the seventh sister's corpse, examining the lightsaber. "But at least I got some souvenirs." He collected both lightsabers, clipping them to his belt like trophies. The weapons felt strange, warm, almost alive, humming with residual Force energy. He couldn't use them properly, couldn't feel the Kyber crystal's connection to the Force, but they'd make excellent conversation pieces. Behind him, Gracchus's enforcers had witnessed the entire fight. They looked at Alucard with a mixture of terror and awe. He turned to address them, spreading his arms theatrically. "Oruba's security is handled. The Inquisitors are handled. I believe that fulfills my employment contract." He paused. "Oh, and someone should probably clean this up. I'd hate for the neighborhood property values to drop." As he walked away from the carnage, Alucard felt something shift in the air around him, not the Force, which still refused to acknowledge his existence, but something more mundane. Attention. The Empire had noticed him now. Really noticed him. Good. He'd been worried this vacation was going to be boring. Somewhere above, in the cold void of space, the Grand Inquisitor received the fifth brother's frantic report. The Padawan listened in silence, his expression unreadable as his subordinate described the massacre, the impossible regeneration, the complete failure of Force-based tactics. When the report finished, the Grand Inquisitor made a single decision. "Prepare my ship," he said quietly, "and send a priority transmission to Lord Vader on Mustafar. Tell him we have encountered something that requires his personal attention. Something that exists outside the Force itself." The officer paled. "My lord, are you certain?" "Lord Vader does not appreciate being disturbed unless I am certain." The Grand Inquisitor's yellow eyes gleamed. "If this creature is what I believe it to be, then it represents a threat to the very foundations of the Emperor's power, and if there's one thing Lord Vader understands, it's eliminating threats." The transmission was sent, and in his fortress on Mustafar, surrounded by lava flows and the screaming of his own eternal pain, Darth Vader received the message and considered. A being outside the Force, impossible. Yet the Grand Inquisitor did not make such claims lightly. Vader rose from his meditation chamber, his mechanical breathing echoing through the corridors of his fortress. If this creature was real, if it truly existed beyond the Force's reach, then it was either a weapon to be claimed or a threat to be destroyed. Either way, he would handle it personally. The hunt was escalating. Darth Vader's shuttle descended through Nar Shaddaa's polluted atmosphere like a dagger of Imperial authority cutting through the moon's criminal chaos. The Dark Lord sat in meditation, his breathing apparatus providing its rhythmic, mechanical soundtrack to his thoughts. The Force swirled around him, a maelstrom of suffering, greed, fear, and the faint echoes of violence that permeated every level of the smuggler's moon. But within that maelstrom, there was a void, a space where the Force simply stopped, not blocked, as one might shield themselves from detection, not corrupted, as the dark side twisted living energy, just absent, as if someone had cut a hole in the fabric of reality itself. Vader found it profoundly disturbing. Lord Vader. The shuttle pilot's voice crackled over the internal comm. We're approaching the coordinates. Gracchus, the Hutt's palace district. Land at the nearest Imperial garrison, Vader commanded. Then leave. I will handle this alone. The pilot knew better than to question. Within minutes, Vader stood on a landing platform overlooking the Duros sector, his cape billowing in the recycled air currents. Around him, stormtroopers snapped to attention, their fear palpable in the Force. Their commander, a nervous captain, approached with a datapad. Lord Vader, we have the entity's last known location, Gracchus's palace, approximately 2 kilometers from here. Intelligence suggests the creature has been... Vader raised a hand. The captain's words cut off, not from force choke, but from sheer intimidating presence. I do not require a briefing, Captain. I require you to evacuate all Imperial personnel from the surrounding sectors. Establish a perimeter at 5 kilometers. No one enters or leaves. My lord, the Hutt's palace is sovereign territory. If we establish a military perimeter, the Hutts will cooperate. Or, I will demonstrate why their sovereignty exists at the Emperor's pleasure. Vader's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. You have 30 minutes. Begin. The captain saluted and fled, already barking orders into his comlink. Vader turned his attention back to the void in the Force, studying it with the analytical precision that had made him the Empire's most effective weapon. The absence moved slowly, deliberately, through the criminal underworld's territory. Following it through the Force was like trying to track a black hole by the stars it consumed. Fascinating and dangerous. Vader began walking toward the palace, his boots ringing on durasteel with each measured step. Citizens scattered before him, his reputation preceded him on every world. But especially here, where Imperial authority was usually bought rather than enforced. Today, they would remember why the Empire was feared. Alucard was enjoying Gracchus's hospitality, which consisted of expensive liquor, uncomfortable furniture designed for Hutt physiology, and a parade of increasingly nervous criminal lieutenants reporting on territorial expansions. The vampire had claimed a throne-like chair, obviously meant for important guests, his boots propped up on a priceless Alderaanian art piece, and was systematically working through his third bottle of something that tasted like starship fuel mixed with citrus. And the Pikes are requesting a meeting about Kessel spice routes, a Rhodian lieutenant was saying. They're willing to offer 15%. Boring, Alucard interrupted. Next report. Give me something with violence or political intrigue, preferably both. Gracchus rumbled something in Hutes that the protocol droid translated nervously. The great Gracchus suggests that you are perhaps too enthusiastic about violence for long-term business relationships. I'm a vampire, not a businessman. Violence is my business, and business is booming. Alucard drained his glass. Speaking of which, when can I expect retaliation for killing those Inquisitors? I was hoping for more space wizards, maybe some star destroyers, perhaps an orbital bombardment or two. You know, proper escalation. That may happen sooner than you think, Gracchus replied. Imperial sensors detected a shuttle landing at their garrison. Priority encryption. High-value cargo. Alucard sat up, interest peaked. High value as in important fascist, or high value as in someone who might actually be entertaining to fight? Before anyone could answer, every guard in the palace suddenly tensed. Weapons were drawn. Comlinks crackled with panicked chatter. Alucard felt it too, not through any mystical sense, but through pure predatory instinct. Something dangerous was approaching. Something that made even Nar Shaddaa's hardened criminals nervous. Well, this should be interesting, Alucard said, standing and adjusting his hat. How much do you want to bet it's? The palace's main entrance exploded inward, not from explosives, but from pure telekinetic force that crumpled reinforced durasteel like paper. Through the smoke and debris walked a figure in black armor, his cape flowing behind him, his mechanical breathing filling the sudden silence like a death rattle given rhythm. Darth Vader had arrived. Alucard's grin stretched impossibly wide. Oh, this is perfect. Gracchus's guards opened fire immediately, a wall of blaster bolts that would have shredded any normal intruder. Vader didn't break stride. His lightsaber ignited, a blade of pure crimson, and the bolts deflected harmlessly into walls and ceiling. Those he didn't deflect, he simply absorbed with his raised hand, the energy dissipating against some kind of force barrier. Within seconds, a dozen guards lay dead or dying, their weapons cut in half, their bodies bearing cauterized wounds. Vader stopped in the center of the throne room, his masked gaze sweeping across the assembled criminals before settling on Alucard. The Dark Lord said nothing. He simply studied the vampire with the kind of attention usually reserved for analyzing enemy battle tactics or identifying structural weaknesses in capital ships. Alucard studied him right back. This wasn't like the Inquisitors, this was something else entirely. The air around Vader felt heavy, oppressive, like standing at the bottom of an ocean of malice and power. The dark energy radiating from him made the Inquisitors look like children playing with matches. "You must be the famous Darth Vader," Alucard said cheerfully. "The Emperor's attack dog, the Jedi killer. I've heard stories well. No, actually I haven't. I've been here for less than a day, but I'm sure if I had heard stories, they'd be very intimidating." Vader's breathing continued its mechanical rhythm. When he spoke, his voice was deep, modulated through his mask, carrying absolute authority. "You are the anomaly, the creature that exists outside the Force, guilty as charged. I'm Alucard, professional vampire, enthusiastic murderer, and currently employed by that slug over there." He gestured to Gracchus, who had wisely pulled his bulk back from the confrontation. "And you've interrupted my drinking, which is terribly rude. Didn't your mother teach you manners?" "My mother taught me many things." Vader's hand tightened on his lightsaber hilt. "How to recognize threats, how to eliminate them. You are a threat." "Oh, we're doing the dramatic pronouncement thing. I love this." Alucard spread his arms wide. "By all means, Lord Vader, demonstrate why you're the most feared man in the galaxy. I could use the exercise." Vader didn't respond with words, he responded with violence. His hand extended, and the Force gripped Alucard with crushing pressure, an invisible fist that should have pulverized bones and ruptured organs. Alucard felt the pressure, felt something trying to squeeze the existence out of him, and laughed. Telekinesis. How delightfully practical. He flexed, and his body simply refused to be crushed, not through resistance, but through the fundamental wrongness of his existence. The Force could push against him, could affect him, but trying to kill him through it was like trying to strangle smoke. "But you see, I'm already dead, have been for 5 centuries. Your space magic doesn't quite know what to do with that." Vader's hand shifted, and suddenly Alucard was flying through the air, hurled by telekinetic force through a stone pillar. He crashed through it, through the wall behind it, and into the street beyond. The impact would have killed any normal being. Alucard stood up, dusted off his coat, and walked back through the hole in the wall. "Rude," he commented. "You owe that slug a new wall." Vader was already moving. He closed the distance with force-enhanced speed, his lightsaber singing through the air in a perfectly executed strike designed to bisect Alucard at the shoulders. The blade connected, burning through the vampire's coat, flesh, and bone. Alucard's top half separated from his bottom half, both pieces hitting the ground wetly. Vader stood over the bisected corpse, lightsaber still ignited, waiting. The corpse laughed. "Oh, that tingles," Alucard's upper half said, propping itself up on its elbows. "Do you know how long it's been since someone actually managed to cut me in half? I think the last one was a blessed bayonet in World War II. Or was it the Dandy Man? The decades blur together after a while." His lower half began moving, crawling toward his upper half like some grotesque spider. Vader watched, his expression hidden behind his mask, as the vampire's body flowed back together in a mass of shadows and regenerating tissue. Within seconds, Alucard was whole again, not even breathing hard because he didn't need to breathe. "Your turn's over," Alucard said, his voice dropping to something darker. "Now it's mine." He moved. Not with force speed, but with pure vampiric velocity, a supernatural blur that crossed the distance between them faster than Vader's precognition could track. Because there was nothing to track, the Force couldn't warn Vader about an attack from something that didn't exist in the Force. Alucard's fist caught Vader in the chest plate, and the Dark Lord went flying backward, crashing through Gracchus's throne with enough force to crack the stone beneath. Alucard followed, not giving him time to recover, and grabbed Vader by the helmet. "Let's see what's under here," the vampire purred. Vader's hand shot up, catching Alucard's wrist with mechanical strength. They were locked in a contest of raw physical power, Vader's cybernetic enhancements versus Alucard's supernatural might. The floor beneath them cracked from the pressure. "You are strong," Vader acknowledged, "but strength alone will not save you." Lightning erupted from Vader's other hand, not the blue-white of typical Force lightning, but something darker, more intense, channeled through his hatred and pain and augmented by the dark side. It slammed into Alucard at point-blank range, millions of volts coursing through the vampire's body. Alucard screamed, not in pain exactly, but in exhilaration. Yes, there it is, proper violence, actual effort. His free hand grabbed Vader's wrist, stopping the lightning. "But if we're doing electricity," he headbutted Vader's mask with enough force to crack the reinforced plating. The Dark Lord's breathing apparatus stuttered, his vision swimming, but he didn't release his grip. Instead, he channeled more power into the lightning, increasing the voltage until Alucard's coat began to smoke and his flesh charred black. The vampire's grin never wavered. "Is that all? The Anderson Hellsing hit me with blessed incendiary rounds. The Vatican used holy water artillery. You'll have to do better than fancy electricity." They broke apart simultaneously, both reassessing. Vader's breathing was labored. The headbutt had damaged something in his life support systems. Alucard's body was charred and smoking, but already regenerating, blackened flesh sloughing off to reveal whole skin beneath. Around them, Gracchus's palace was a wreck. The walls bore scorch marks from deflected blaster fire and Force lightning. Bodies of guards lay scattered. The crime lord himself had retreated to a safe distance, watching two apex predators test each other's limits. "You cannot be killed," Vader stated. "Not a question. Not by any method you possess, no." Alucard's regeneration completed. "I've been shot, stabbed, burned, blessed, cursed, exploded, disintegrated, and once had my heart ripped out and stomped on. None of it stuck. Then I will find another way." Vader's hand extended, and the ceiling began to collapse. Tons of stone and metal, guided by telekinesis, came crashing down on Alucard's position. The vampire vanished under the avalanche, buried under enough rubble to crush a tank. Vader waited, lightsaber ready, feeling through the Force for any sign of nothing. There was nothing to sense. The void remained, somewhere under the rubble, infuriatingly present yet impossibly absent from the Force's awareness. The rubble exploded outward. Alucard emerged, his coat tattered, his hat missing, covered in dust but grinning like a maniac. "Are we bonding?" This feels like bonding. Violence and mutual attempted murder, it's how I make all my best friends. I am not your friend, Vader said coldly. Not yet, but give it time. Alucard retrieved his hat from the rubble, dusted it off, and placed it back on his head. You're actually interesting, Lord Vader. You fight like you've got nothing to lose and everything to prove. There's a delicious darkness in you, not the theatrical evil of those Inquisitors, but something genuine, something painful. You know nothing of pain. I know that you're more machine than man, that every breath causes you agony, and that you use that pain to fuel your power. Alucard's grin softened into something almost sympathetic. I can hear your heartbeat, Vader. Or what's left of it. Whatever happened to you, whatever made you into this, it was catastrophic, and you chose to keep living through it. For the first time since arriving, Vader hesitated. How could this creature know? I'm a vampire, Alucard said, as if reading the question. I hear heartbeats like you hear the Force, and yours is fascinating, damaged, struggling, kept alive through pure spite and machinery. He tilted his head. We're not so different, you and I. Both of us are monsters wearing human shapes. Both of us exist through means that defy natural law. We are nothing alike. Keep telling yourself that. Alucard pulled out the jackal, checking its ammunition. But here's the reality of our situation. You can't kill me. I probably can't kill you, not easily, anyway. Those cybernetics look expensive and well protected. We could fight for hours, destroy this entire district, and accomplish nothing except giving Gracchus a remodeling bill. What do you propose? Vader's tone suggested he was considering simply orbital bombarding the entire sector. A conversation, a philosophical debate between monsters. Alucard's smile was sharp. You serve an emperor who rules through fear and the Force. But what happens when something immune to fear exists outside the Force? What happens when your master's favorite tools don't work? Vader was silent for a long moment, his breathing the only sound in the ruined throne room. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of consideration. You suggest cooperation. I suggest mutual non-aggression followed by entertainment. You're hunting rebels, yes, Jedi survivors, Force-sensitive threats to your empire. Alucard spread his arms. I'm bored, violent, and completely unopposed to hunting dangerous people for profit. And unlike your Inquisitors, I can't be killed when things go wrong. The Emperor would never accept. The Emperor doesn't need to know. Alucard's grin was pure mischief. You're Darth Vader. You don't strike me as someone who asks permission. And I'm offering my services as an independent contractor for the most fascinating job in the galaxy. Hunting space wizards who can see the future but can't see me. Vader considered. Every tactical instinct he possessed screamed that this creature was a threat that should be eliminated. But the pragmatist in him, the part that had learned to use any tool, any weapon, any advantage to achieve victory, saw potential. A being that existed outside the Force. An unkillable hunter who could operate where Jedi precognition failed. A creature too insane to be predictable and too powerful to be easily stopped. You would betray Gracchus the Hutt? Vader asked. I'd betray anyone for a more interesting employer, Alucard replied cheerfully. Criminals are boring. They think small. You think in star systems and galactic domination. Much more my speed. The Dark Lord was silent. Then, if you betray the Empire, I will find a way to kill you. If you endanger Imperial operations, I will find a way to contain you. If you disobey direct orders, I will make you regret your existence. See? You get me. Alucard's grin was all teeth. So, do we have an accord? Or should we continue punching each other until one of us gets bored? Vader made his decision. You will report to the Imperial garrison. We will establish terms. If you prove useful, you live. If you prove troublesome, he let the threat hang. Looking forward to it, Alucard said, then turned to Gracchus, who'd been watching the entire exchange with horrified fascination. "Sorry about your palace, slug. Consider our contract terminated. I've found more interesting employment." Gracchus wisely said nothing as the vampire and the Dark Lord walked out together, leaving behind a throne room that looked like a war zone. The hut's protocol droid leaned in and translated quietly. "The great Gracchus believes we should find a new line of work. Perhaps something less likely to attract galaxy-destroying monsters." Outside, as Vader and Alucard walked through the streets of Nar Shaddaa, stormtroopers maintaining their perimeter parted like water before a shark. Citizens pressed themselves against walls, unable to process the sight of Darth Vader walking alongside a grinning figure in red. "So," Alucard said conversationally, "this empire of yours, tell me about its enemies, and please say they're powerful and numerous. I have standards." Vader's breathing apparatus cycled. "There is a rebel alliance. They possess dangerous force sensitives. They hide across the galaxy, striking at Imperial assets. Perfect. When do we start?" "Immediately." Alucard laughed, a sound of pure delight that echoed through the neon-soaked streets. "Oh, I'm going to enjoy this galaxy." Behind his mask, Darth Vader calculated probabilities. This creature was unpredictable, dangerous, and entirely outside his master's control. But if properly directed, it could be the key to eliminating threats that had evaded even the Empire's vast resources. And if it became a problem itself, Vader would find a solution. He always did. The hunt was about to enter a new phase. And somewhere in the Outer Rim, rebel cells went about their missions, completely unaware that something new was hunting them, something their force-sensitive allies couldn't sense, something that didn't die when you killed it. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson. Just because you couldn't sense a threat in the Force didn't mean it wasn't coming for you. The rebel cell on Lothal called themselves Phoenix Squadron, a pretentious name, Alucard thought, for a group of poorly armed insurgents operating out of a stolen Corellian corvette. But Vader had assigned him this target specifically, and the Dark Lord's reasoning had been sound. Phoenix Squadron harbored known Jedi survivors, Force sensitives who'd evaded the Inquisitorius for years. "They'll sense an Imperial attack coming," Vader had explained during their brief strategy session aboard the Star Destroyer. "They'll feel the approach of Inquisitors through the Force. Evacuate before we arrive. Standard tactics have failed repeatedly, but they won't sense me." Alucard had finished, grinning, "Because I'm the blind spot in their cosmic telephone network." "Precisely. You will infiltrate their operation, identify the Jedi, report their location." Vader's mechanical breathing had cycled meaningfully. "Do not engage until Imperial forces arrive. This is reconnaissance, not a massacre." Alucard had agreed to those terms. He'd even meant it at the time. Now, standing in the cargo bay of Phoenix Squadron's corvette, disguised as a refugee from an Imperial labor camp, he was reconsidering. The ship smelled like recycled air, cheap fuel, and the particular optimism of people who believed guerrilla warfare could topple a galactic empire. It was adorable and irritating in equal measure. "Name?" A Twi'lek woman with a datapad stood before him, her expression professionally sympathetic. Behind her, other refugees shuffled through processing families displaced by Imperial occupation, workers fleeing factory conditions, the usual collateral damage of fascist efficiency. "Vlad," Alucard said, using one of his many historical aliases, "Vlad Tepes, from the Outer Rim mining colonies. Any useful skills? Medical, technical, combat? I'm very good at making people stop breathing." He smiled, showing just enough teeth to be unsettling. "Also fluent in 6 languages, though none of them are apparently spoken in this galaxy." The Twi'lek marked something on her datapad, clearly used to traumatized refugees, saying odd things. "You'll be assigned quarters in Section C. Food distribution, is it?" She stopped mid-sentence, her head turning toward the command deck. Alucard felt it too, not through the Force, but through the sudden tension that rippled through the crew. Something had changed. The ship's engines were powering up, the subtle vibration shifting from standby to pre-jump. "Imperial Star Destroyer just entered the system," someone shouted over the intercom. All crew to stations. Preparing emergency jump, the Twi'lek abandoned her datapad and ran. Around Alucard, refugees panicked, children cried, and the organized evacuation descended into controlled chaos. The vampire stood perfectly still in the center of the cargo bay, considering his options. He was supposed to wait, supposed to simply observe and report. But where was the fun in that? Through the ship's bulkheads, he could hear heartbeats, hundreds of them, racing with adrenaline and fear. But two stood out. Steady, controlled, backed by that peculiar energy signature he'd learned to associate with Force users. The Jedi were on the command deck, probably coordinating the escape. Alucard's grin widened. Reconnaissance is so boring. I think I'll introduce myself properly. He walked through the panicking refugees toward the command deck, his boots echoing with each measured step. A security officer tried to stop him. Refugees aren't allowed on the command deck but Alucard simply walked past him. When the officer grabbed his shoulder, the vampire turned and looked at him. Just looked. The officer's hand fell away, his survival instinct screaming warnings his conscious mind couldn't articulate. The command deck was organized chaos. Crew members shouted coordinates, monitored Imperial ship movements, and prepared for a hyperspace jump that might be their only escape. At the center of it all stood two figures. A human male with a short beard and a Lasat, a species Alucard didn't recognize but which looked impressively capable of violence. The human male, Kanan Jarrus, according to the intelligence files, suddenly froze. His hand drifted toward his hip, where Alucard knew a lightsaber was concealed. The man's eyes swept the command deck, searching for a threat his Force senses should have detected but couldn't. "We have a problem," Kanan said quietly to the Lasat. "Besides the Star Destroyer?" The Lasat Zeb, the files had said, replied. "There's something on the ship, something I can't sense." Kanan's hand stayed near his weapon. "Something that shouldn't be here." "Oh, you're good," Alucard said, emerging from behind a console where he'd been listening. "Not good enough to actually sense me, but good enough to notice the absence. That's more than the Inquisitors managed before I killed them." Every weapon on the command deck turned toward him, blasters charged, aimed at his chest. Kanan's hand closed around his lightsaber hilt, but didn't draw yet. The Jedi was clearly trying to puzzle out how a refugee had gotten past security and why the Force refused to acknowledge his existence. "Who are you?" Kanan demanded. "Vlad Tepes, professional refugee and part-time monster." Alucard pulled out his Kazul, examining it casually as if the dozen aimed blasters didn't concern him. "Also, currently employed by Darth Vader to hunt Jedi survivors. Nothing personal, you seem lovely, but a job's a job." The command deck erupted. Blaster bolts converged on Alucard's position, each shot aimed with the precision of experienced rebel soldiers. The vampire stood in the center of the firestorm, letting the energy wash over him, burning holes through his coat and flesh. When the salvo ended, he looked down at the smoking craters in his torso. "Adequate," he judged. "Not great, but adequate." The holes began sealing, flesh knitting back together with wet, organic sounds. "My turn." He moved with supernatural speed, crossing the command deck before anyone could react. His hand closed around a rebel officer's throat, lifting the man off his feet. "Now then, before I start redecorating with internal organs, let's establish some ground rules. 1. Shooting me doesn't work. 2. Running doesn't work. I can hear your heartbeats from 3 star systems away. 3. I'm actually quite reasonable if you don't bore me." Kanan's lightsaber, ignited blue blade humming with contained plasma. "Let him go." "Or what?" "You'll cut me?" Alucard laughed, tossing the officer aside. "Your Inquisitor friends tried that. I've got their lightsabers as trophies. Want to add yours to the collection?" The Jedi lunged, his blade singing through the air in a perfect Soresu form defensive strike designed to disarm without killing. It was beautiful technique, honed by years of practice. The lightsaber passed through Alucard's arm, severing it at the elbow. The limb hit the deck, still twitching. Alucard looked at the stump, then at Kanan, then back at the stump. Well, that's inconvenient. The severed arm dissolved into shadows, flowing back up to reattach itself. Within seconds, he was whole again, but ultimately ineffective. Zeb charged with a bow rifle, the weapon crackling with energy. The Lasat was strong, fast, and experienced, a formidable warrior by any standard. Alucard caught the bow rifle mid-swing with his bare hand, stopping the blow cold. Impressive strength, the vampire acknowledged. I respect that, but let me show you what real strength looks like. He yanked the bow rifle and Zeb with it off the deck, swung the Lasat in a complete arc, and slammed him into a bulkhead hard enough to crack the reinforced metal. The weapon's energy discharge caught Alucard in the chest, burning through his coat and flesh. He didn't even flinch. "This is fun," Alucard announced, his voice carrying manic delight. "You people actually know how to fight." The refugees downstairs just cried and prayed. So boring. But you're trying to kill me with proper combat techniques and everything. Kanan pressed the attack, his lightsaber work flawless as he went on the offensive. Form IV Ataru, now aggressive, acrobatic, designed to overwhelm opponents with rapid strikes. The blue blade carved through Alucard repeatedly. Throat, chest, legs, arms. Each strike was perfect, each wound was fatal, and each one healed within seconds. "You can't win this," Alucard said, catching the lightsaber blade with his hand again. The plasma burned through his palm, but he held on, pulling Kanan closer. "I've fought blessed warriors, Catholic special forces, vampire hunters with centuries of knowledge. You're good Jedi, but you're fighting something your training never prepared you for." Kanan deactivated his lightsaber, letting the blade collapse to avoid Alucard's grip, then reignited it for a strike at the vampire's head. The blade took Alucard's head clean off. It rolled across the deck, still wearing that maddening grin. "Oh, now that's just rude," the head said. The body stood there, headless, then reached down and picked up its own head. It placed the head back on its shoulders where it fused back into place, the flesh knitting seamlessly. Decapitation. Classic. But I stopped dying from that around the 13th century. Alucard cracked his neck, enjoying the horror on the rebels' faces. "You're running out of options, space wizard, and that Star Destroyer is getting closer." Kanan made a tactical decision. "Hera, jump to hyperspace. Now. We haven't finished calculations," a voice crackled over the comlink. "Now." The Corvette lurched as its hyperdrive engaged without proper navigation coordinates, a desperate move that could send them into a sun, through a planet, or into the gravitational shadow of a black hole. The ship shuddered, reality stretching as they transitioned to hyperspace. Alucard stumbled slightly from the unexpected acceleration, more from surprise than actual loss of balance. "Oh, you're running. How pragmatic." He looked at Kanan, his expression shifting from manic amusement to something almost respectful. "Smart. Staying to fight me was pointless. But you've just made this interesting." "You're not getting off this ship," Kanan said, his lightsaber still ignited. Around him, the crew had formed a defensive perimeter, weapons trained on Alucard despite clear evidence that shooting him accomplished nothing. "I don't want off this ship," Alucard replied. "I want to have a conversation. A philosophical debate between a Jedi and a monster." He raised his hands in a gesture of mock surrender. "I'll even holster my weapons. See? I'm being reasonable. You just said you're working for Vader. Reason isn't exactly your strong suit." "Oh, I'm working for Vader because he's interesting and employs me to commit violence. But that doesn't mean I can't appreciate irony." Alucard's grin softened into something almost genuine. "You're a survivor, Jedi. I can tell. You've been hiding, running, probably watching friends die while you stayed alive. That takes a particular kind of strength." Kanan said nothing, his expression guarded. "And now you're protecting these people," Alucard continued, gesturing to the rebel crew. "Fighting an empire you can't possibly defeat with resources that are laughably inadequate. It's noble, it's stupid, It's everything I've learned to expect from the heroically inclined. He tilted his head. So here's my question. Why? What makes you keep fighting when the Force itself must be telling you it's hopeless? Because hope is what separates us from monsters, Kanan replied quietly. Does it though? Alucard's smile turned sharp. I've met plenty of monsters who hoped for things. Power, love, revenge. Hope doesn't make you human, Jedi. Neither does the Force. What makes you different from me isn't what you feel, it's what you choose to do with those feelings. And you choose to work for the Empire, to hunt people like me. I choose to be entertained. Vader offers entertainment. If you offered something more interesting, I'd switch sides in a heartbeat. Alucard spread his arms. I'm a mercenary creature, Kanan Jarrus. I serve no ideology, follow no creed. I exist to remind the universe that some things are beyond its rules. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace too soon, the emergency jump having taken them only a few light years. Alarms blared. On the view screen, empty space stretched in all directions, no planets or stations visible. Hyperdrive is fried, someone reported. We're stranded. Alucard checked a viewport, noting their isolation. Well, this is awkward. You can't jump away again. And that Star Destroyer is probably tracking your last known vector. He turned back to Kanan. So what now, Jedi? Do we continue our fight? Do you try to space me, which won't work? By the way, I don't need to breathe. Or do we talk like civilized monsters? Kanan deactivated his lightsaber but kept it in his hand. What do you want? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Alucard sat down on a console, completely relaxed despite being surrounded by armed enemies. I told Vader I'd identify you and report your location. I've done that, or I will, once I bother to contact him. But you've made this interesting by not dying immediately, and I do appreciate competence. So, you're going to let us go? I didn't say that. Alucard's expression turned thoughtful. I'm considering my options. Option 1. I massacre everyone on this ship, except you and a few survivors. Let you escape to spread terror about the unkillable thing hunting Jedi. Excellent for my reputation. Terrible for my boredom. You'd just hide better next time. Option 2? Kanan asked warily. Option 2. I tell Vader you escaped before I could secure your position. He'll be annoyed, but he can't kill me for incompetence. You get to live, continue your little rebellion, and I get to hunt you properly over a longer time frame. More entertaining for everyone involved. Why would you do that? Alucard's grin returned, full of dark amusement. Because I've been undead for 500 years, Jedi. I've learned that the best entertainment doesn't come from quick victories, it comes from prolonged games where everyone involved gets to surprise each other. He stood, adjusting his hat. Besides, Vader is a fascinating employer, but he's not the only interesting thing in this galaxy. I want to see what else is out there, and you rebels seem to find it regularly. Kanan studied him, trying to read intentions through expressions alone since the Force offered no insight. You're insane, certifiably. But I'm honest about it, which is more than most can say. Alucard walked toward the command deck exit, the crew parting before him like water. Repair your hyperdrive. Run. Hide. Tell your rebel friends that something new is hunting them, something their Force senses can't detect. Make them paranoid. Make them careful. He paused at the doorway, looking back. And Kanan Jarrus? Next time we meet, don't hold back. Use your full power. I want to see what a real Jedi can do when they're fighting for their life against something that refuses to die. There won't be a next time, Kanan said, though his voice lacked conviction. Oh, there will be, because I'm going to make sure of it. Alucard's grin was all teeth and dark promise. The galaxy is about to learn a very important lesson. Just because you can't sense the monster doesn't mean it's not hunting you. He dissolved into shadows, a trick he'd been practicing since arriving in this galaxy, and flowed through the ship's ventilation system toward the cargo bay. Behind him, the command deck erupted into frantic activity, as crew members tried to track his movement through sensors that couldn't detect something without proper mass or heat signature. In the cargo bay, Alucard reformed, startling the refugees who'd been huddled there. He walked to the airlock, opened it manually, and stepped out into the vacuum of space. The explosive decompression sucked air and debris out behind him, but he simply stood in the void, his coat billowing in the escaping atmosphere, and watched the Corvette's engines sputter to life as they desperately worked to repair their hyperdrive. He didn't need to breathe, didn't need heat. The vacuum was just another environment, mildly uncomfortable but entirely survivable for something that had stopped following biological rules centuries ago. When the Corvette finally jumped to hyperspace, leaving him floating in empty space, Alucard activated his stolen Imperial comlink. "Lord Vader," he said, his voice carrying through the void via the comlink's encrypted channel. Alucard reporting. "I've located Phoenix Squadron. They escaped before I could provide precise coordinates, but I've planted a tracker on their hull. A lie, but a useful one. They're headed for the Outer Rim. I recommend intercepting their supply runs rather than direct assault. These rebels are paranoid enough now." Vader's mechanical breathing filled the channel. "You allowed them to escape. I allowed them to think they escaped. There's a difference." Alucard grinned at the stars. "Trust me, Lord Vader. Fear is so much more useful than corpses. They'll tell everyone about the thing that exists outside the Force. They'll make your enemies paranoid, and paranoid enemies make mistakes." There was a long pause. Then, "You are either brilliantly strategic or catastrophically insubordinate. I have not yet determined which. Can't it be both?" Another pause. "A shuttle will retrieve you within the hour. When you return, we will discuss the parameters of your employment and the consequences of operating outside assigned mission parameters." "Looking forward to it," Alucard said cheerfully. The comlink went dead. He floated in the void, surrounded by stars he didn't recognize in constellations that had never existed in his original universe. Behind him, somewhere in the infinite darkness, the rebel Corvette fled. Ahead, Vader's empire spread across thousands of systems, and Alucard stood between them, belonging to neither, serving both, loyal only to his own entertainment. "This galaxy," he said to the uncaring void, "is going to be such fun." The Imperial Star Destroyer Devastator hung in orbit above Mustafar, like a dagger pointed at the galaxy's throat. Alucard stood in the observation deck, watching the lava flows on the planet's surface carve glowing orange scars across the volcanic landscape. It reminded him of hell, not the metaphorical hell humans feared, but the actual dimension he'd glimpsed during his more esoteric encounters with the supernatural. "Cheerful place," he commented to the stormtrooper stationed nearby. "Very eternal damnation aesthetic. Does the Dark Lord have a thing for suffering, or is the real estate just cheap?" The stormtrooper said nothing, because speaking to the vampire who'd walked through vacuum and returned unharmed seemed like an excellent way to attract unwanted attention. Vader's fortress rose from Mustafa's surface like a monument to pain, all sharp angles and scorched metal, built on the site where Anakin Skywalker had died and Darth Vader had been born. Alucard had read the intelligence files during his shuttle ride, piecing together the story from Imperial records and crew gossip. A Jedi, burned alive by his master, rebuilt as a cyborg enforcer. Tragedy, betrayal, transformation. It was beautiful in its brutality. "Alucard." Vader's voice crackled over the intercom. "Report to the meditation chamber." The vampire made his way through the Star Destroyer's corridors, following the subtle pull of dark energy that radiated from Vader's presence. Officers and crew members pressed themselves against walls as he passed, their fear palpable. Word had spread about what he was, an unkillable creature that served the Dark Lord, existing outside the Force itself. Good. Fear was useful. The meditation chamber was a spherical room dominated by Vader's personal hyperbaric chamber, a black egg that opened like a mechanical flower. Inside, Vader sat without his helmet, his scarred face exposed, cybernetic attachments visible where flesh met machine. The Dark Lord's eyes yellow with dark side corruption fixed on Alucard as the vampire entered. "You let them escape," Vader said. "Not an accusation, a statement. I let them think they escaped." Alucard settled into a chair uninvited, crossing his legs. "There's a strategic difference. The rebels now know something hunts them that their force senses can't detect. That knowledge will spread, paranoia will follow, and paranoid enemies make tactical errors, or they adapt. Become more careful, more difficult to track, possibly, but fear is a weapon, Lord Vader. You of all people should understand that." Alucard gestured to the fortress around them. "Your entire empire runs on fear. The Death Star, which I've read about in your very detailed Imperial archives, was designed specifically to terrorize the galaxy into submission. I'm simply applying the same principle on a smaller scale." Vader's breathing apparatus cycled. The man was still connected to life support, even in his meditation chamber. "The Emperor does not appreciate subordinates who operate outside mission parameters. Then it's fortunate the Emperor doesn't know about me yet." Alucard's grin was sharp. "You haven't reported my existence to him, have you? You've kept me as your personal asset. Your secret weapon against threats that conventional tactics can't handle." The temperature in the room dropped perceptibly. Vader's hand twitched, not quite reaching for his lightsaber, but the threat was implicit. "You presume much. I observe accurately. You're the Emperor's attack dog. Yes, but you're also a strategist, and strategists know the value of resources that can't be traced back to official channels." Alucard leaned forward. "So let's be honest with each other, Lord Vader. You didn't bring me onto your Star Destroyer to punish me for letting the rebels escape. You brought me here to determine if I'm an asset worth keeping or a threat that needs to be eliminated." Vader studied him with those yellow eyes, his scarred face unreadable. When he spoke, his voice lacked the mechanical modulation of his mask. It was raw, damaged, carrying the pain of decades of burns and synthetic vocal cords. "You are correct. The Emperor does not know about you. Yet, I have delayed the report, because you see potential, because you represent an unknown variable in a galaxy I thought I understood." Vader's hands gripped the armrests of his meditation throne. "The Force is absolute. It binds all living things. It allows the Jedi and Sith to sense danger, predict enemy movements, manipulate reality itself. For 20 years, I have hunted Force sensitives using these advantages, but you exist outside those rules, and that terrifies you," Alucard said softly. "Because if I can exist outside the Force, what else can? What other blind spots exist in your cosmic awareness? What other threats are out there that you can't sense coming?" Vader's breathing quickened slightly, the only sign of emotional response his damaged body allowed. "You are perceptive for a creature of instinct. I'm 500 years old. Instinct evolves into insight after a few centuries." Alucard stood, walking to the viewport that overlooked Mustafa's hellscape. "But you're not wrong to be concerned. I am a blind spot, and in a galaxy where power is defined by the Force, blind spots are catastrophic vulnerabilities, which is why I am considering 3 options regarding your continued existence." "Oh, this should be entertaining. Do share." Vader's mechanical chair rotated to face him fully. "Option 1. I inform the Emperor of your existence. He will want you studied, dissected, understood. You would become a science experiment, confined to some Imperial research facility, while the Empire determines how to replicate or weaponize your immunity to the Force. Pass. I don't do well in cages. The last person who tried to contain me ended up decorating his laboratory walls from the inside. Option 2. I eliminate you. Orbital bombardment, perhaps. Or lure you to a location I can collapse. Bury you under sufficient mass that even your regeneration cannot free you. Trap you rather than kill you, since killing appears impossible, creative, but ultimately pointless. I'd escape eventually, and then I'd be annoyed, which is bad for everyone's health except mine." Alucard turned from the viewport. "What's option 3? "Option 3. I employ you as an independent operative. Black operations. Missions where Imperial involvement must remain deniable. Targets who must be eliminated without official sanction. Vader's yellow eyes gleamed. You would be my hidden blade. The weapon the Empire doesn't acknowledge exists. Alucard's grin widened slowly. Now that sounds properly entertaining. There would be conditions. Of course there would be. You strike me as someone who doesn't offer blank checks. Vader stood, his damaged body moving with careful precision as cybernetics compensated for ruined flesh. He approached Alucard, and the two predators, one forged in tragedy, one born in darkness, stood face to face. You will not engage rebel targets without authorization, Vader said. You will not reveal your existence to Imperial officers without my explicit permission. You will not operate in any capacity that draws the Emperor's attention. And most importantly, he leaned closer, his scarred face inches from Alucard's grin. You will never, under any circumstances, betray me, because while I cannot kill you permanently, I will find ways to make your existence so unbearably tedious that you will beg for destruction. Ooh, threatening me with boredom. That's actually more effective than the orbital bombardment option. Alucard's eyes gleamed behind his orange glasses. I accept your terms, with one addition. You are not in a position to negotiate. I'm always in a position to negotiate. I'm unkillable. That's an excellent negotiating position. Alucard's smile turned sharp. My addition. I want full access to Imperial intelligence networks. If I'm hunting your enemies, I need to know who they are, where they are, and what resources they have. I'm effective, Lord Vader, but even I can't hunt what I can't find. Vader considered this. Intelligence access was a significant request. It would give this creature insight into Imperial operations, strategic deployments, classified information that could compromise the Empire if leaked to rebels. But it would also make him far more effective as a hunter. Limited access, Vader decided. Target packages only. No strategic data, no fleet movements, no information about Imperial governance or the Emperor's projects. Fair enough. I'm not interested in your politics anyway, just the people I'm supposed to kill. Alucard extended his hand. Do we have an accord? Vader stared at the offered hand for a long moment. In his experience, deals made with monsters always came with hidden costs. But then, he was a monster himself. Perhaps monsters understood each other better than either understood the concept of honor. He gripped Alucard's hand. The vampire's flesh was cold, lacking the warmth of living tissue. Vader's cybernetic hand was equally lifeless. Two dead things shaking hands in a fortress built on suffering. We have an accord, Vader said. Your first mission begins immediately. Excellent. What's the target? Vader returned to his meditation throne, and a holographic display flickered to life between them. It showed a planet lush, covered in forests and mountains, distinctly habitable. Dantooine, former rebel base, supposedly abandoned. Recent intelligence suggests a Jedi Master is training new Force sensitives there in secret. A Master Shan, survivor of the Purge. Alucard studied the hologram. And you want me to eliminate this Master Shan and any students? No, I want you to observe them. Learn their training methods, their Force techniques, their connections to other rebel cells. Vader's fingers steepled. Then, when I have what I need, you will kill them all. But not before. This is an intelligence operation first, an assassination second. Reconnaissance followed by creative murder. I can work with that. Alucard tilted his head. But there's something you're not telling me. If this is just about eliminating Jedi, you'd send Inquisitors. Why send me specifically? Vader's expression shifted, something almost resembling respect crossing his scarred features. Because Master Shan is powerful. She survived the Purge by being more cautious, more paranoid than her peers. She will sense Inquisitors approaching light years away. But you, he gestured to Alucard. You, she cannot sense. You will be invisible to her Force awareness until you're standing in her meditation chamber. Ah, So I'm not just a hunter, I'm the perfect assassin for Force users. Alucard's grin stretched wide. Lord Vader, I'm beginning to think this partnership is going to be quite profitable for both of us. Do not mistake professional cooperation for friendship, Vader warned. I am your employer, not your ally. Of course, strictly professional. Alucard moved toward the exit, then paused. But since we're being professional, let me offer some advice from one monster to another. You're in constant pain. Every breath causes agony. Your suit is deliberately designed to be uncomfortable, to fuel your connection to the dark side through suffering. Vader's hand did move to his lightsaber now. How do you know this? I can hear your heartbeat, remember? I can hear the way your cybernetics grind against damaged tissue. I can hear the electrical impulses struggling through scarred nerves. Alucard turned back, his expression unusually serious. And I can hear something else. You've accepted this pain as permanent, as deserved. You use it as fuel, yes, but you also see it as punishment for whatever catastrophe made you into this. You know nothing of my past. I know tragedy when I see it. I've caused enough of it myself. Alucard's smile softened into something almost sympathetic. Whatever happened to you, whoever you were before you're punishing yourself, the Emperor probably encourages it because it makes you stronger in the dark side. But here's the thing about punishment, Lord Vader. At some point, you have to decide if you're atoning or just wallowing. For a long moment, the meditation chamber was silent except for Vader's mechanical breathing. When the Dark Lord spoke, his voice was cold enough to freeze hydrogen. Get out. Alucard bowed with theatrical flourish. As you command, my lord. I'll be on Dantooine, doing horrible things to Jedi. Try not to miss me. He left before Vader could respond, the door hissing shut behind him. In the meditation chamber, Darth Vader sat alone with his thoughts, a luxury he rarely permitted himself. The vampire's words echoed in his mind, unwanted and uncomfortably accurate. Punishment, atonement, wallowing. Vader crushed the thoughts with the same ruthless efficiency he applied to all weakness. He was the Emperor's enforcer, the fist of the Empire. Emotional introspection was a luxury he could not afford. But as his meditation chamber sealed and his helmet lowered back into place, restoring the mechanical breathing that had defined him for 2 decades, a small part of him, the part that had once been a Jedi, a hero, a man named Anakin, wondered if the vampire was right. He dismissed the thought. Sentiment was weakness, and Darth Vader had purged himself of weakness long ago, or so he told himself. Aboard the shuttle carrying him toward Dantooine, Alucard settled into the pilot's chair and reviewed the intelligence files on Master Shan, a powerful Jedi, cautious, skilled in both combat and force techniques. She'd been training new students in secret, rebuilding the Order 1 force sensitive at a time. How delightfully optimistic, he murmured, scrolling through hollow projections of her suspected training grounds. Trying to rebuild something the Empire spent 20 years destroying. It's either brave or suicidal, possibly both, his comlink chirped. Vader's voice, modulated by his mask once more, filled the shuttle. Alucard, one more thing. Yes, my lord? If you mention our conversation to anyone Imperial, Rebel, or otherwise, I will find a way to make your existence unbearable. This is not a threat, it is a promise. Alucard's grin returned in full force. Your secrets are safe with me, Lord Vader. Professional confidentiality and all that. Besides, I rather enjoy having leverage over the second most powerful being in the galaxy. The comlink went dead. Alucard laughed a sound that echoed through the empty shuttle and set course for Dantooine. Behind him, in his fortress on Mustafar, Darth Vader returned to his meditation. But for the first time in years, he found his thoughts straying from tactical planning and imperial strategy to uncomfortable philosophical questions about punishment, purpose, and whether monsters could ever be anything more than the sum of their violence. He crushed those thoughts too. But they took slightly longer to die than usual. The partnership between the Dark Lord and the vampire had begun in earnest, and the galaxy would soon learn that some threats came not from the light or the dark side, but from the spaces between where the Force itself had blind spots. Dantooine was insufferably peaceful. Rolling grasslands stretched to horizons broken only by ancient ruins and the occasional herd of grazing animals whose names Alucard neither knew nor cared to learn. The planet radiated tranquility, the kind of calm that made his teeth itch with boredom. No wars, no violence, just endless fields of green and blue sky, and the sort of serenity that suggested nobody here had learned the galaxy's fundamental lesson. Peace was temporary, violence was eternal. If I have to spend more than a week on this pastoral hellscape, I'm going to start a war just to pass the time, Alucard muttered, adjusting his scanner. The device, Imperial technology modified to detect Force-sensitive activity rather than biological signatures, showed a concentration of energy approximately 15 kilometers north. Master Shan's training compound, presumably. He'd been on Dantooine for 3 days, establishing his cover as a wandering salvager searching the ancient ruins for pre-Republic artifacts. The locals had accepted his story with the trusting naivety of people who genuinely believed in galactic peace. One farmer had even offered him lodging. Alucard had politely declined sleeping in barns was beneath him, and explaining why he didn't actually need sleep would raise uncomfortable questions. Now, as the planet's twin suns set in a display of orange and purple that would have been beautiful to anyone with functioning aesthetic appreciation, Alucard made his way toward the compound. He moved with supernatural silence, his boots leaving no impressions in the grass, his presence a void in the Force that even the planet's natural energy couldn't fill. The compound was modest, a collection of prefabricated structures arranged around a central courtyard, all of it hidden in a valley that wouldn't show up on standard Imperial scans. Smart. Master Shan had learned from the Purge's lessons. Stay small, stay hidden, stay paranoid. Alucard settled onto a hilltop overlooking the compound, pulled out a pair of enhanced macrobinoculars, and began his observation. Vader wanted intelligence before assassination. Fine, he could be patient when properly entertained. The compound housed approximately 20 individuals, 10 adults, 10 children ranging from early childhood to adolescence. Master Shan was easy to identify, a human woman in her 50s, grey hair tied back severely, moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd spent decades honing combat reflexes. She carried herself like a weapon that had chosen to become a teacher. The students trained in the courtyard. Lightsaber forms basic kata, nothing too advanced. The older students sparred under supervision, while the younger ones practiced meditation. It was all very orthodox, very traditional Jedi. Peaceful warriors training to protect the helpless. It made Alucard want to vomit from sheer wholesomeness. "Let's see what you're really teaching them," he murmured, activating his scanner's audio enhancement. Imperial technology was remarkable. He could hear conversations from nearly a kilometer away with perfect clarity. Master Shan's voice carried across the valley. "Remember, the Force is not a weapon. It is a tool for knowledge, for defense. The Sith corrupt it through passion and hatred. We maintain balance through peace and understanding." One of the older students, a Twi'lek boy perhaps 15 years old, raised his hand. "But Master Shan, the Empire uses the Force as a weapon. Darth Vader uses it to kill. If we're going to fight them, shouldn't we? We are not training to fight, Kelvan." Master Shan's voice was gentle but firm. "We are training to preserve. The Jedi Order fell because it became too involved in politics, too willing to compromise its principles for pragmatic concerns. We will not repeat those mistakes." Another student, a human girl, spoke up. "But the Empire is hunting us. The Inquisitors killed Master Dune last year. They'll find us eventually. Shouldn't we prepare to defend ourselves?" Master Shan was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of experience and loss. "Yes, we will defend ourselves if necessary. But defense is not the same as aggression. We do not seek out violence. We do not become what we fight against." She paused. "The moment we start training warriors instead of peacekeepers, we become servants of the dark side, no matter our intentions." Alucard recorded the conversation, his expression thoughtful behind his orange glasses. Interesting philosophy. Admirable, even in its idealism, but ultimately useless. The galaxy didn't care about intentions or philosophy. It cared about power and those who could wield it effectively. Still, he had to admit a grudging respect for Master Shan's conviction. She'd survived the purge by being cautious, had hidden successfully for 2 decades, and was now training the next generation with the same philosophies that had gotten the previous generation slaughtered. It was either principled consistency or profound stupidity, probably both. As darkness fell, Alucard moved closer. Not close enough to be detected. Even beings who couldn't sense him through the Force could still see and hear him if he was careless, but close enough to observe the evening routines, the security measures, the patterns of behavior that would inform his eventual strike. Master Shan posted guards, 2 students on rotation, positioned at the compound's perimeter. They were attentive, disciplined, using the Force to extend their awareness across the surrounding grasslands. Good technique. Against normal threats, they'd provide adequate early warning. Against something the Force couldn't detect, they were decorative. Alucard spent the night cataloging vulnerabilities. The compound's generator was poorly shielded. A single well-placed shot would leave them in darkness. The prefab structures were durable but not reinforced. Lightsabers could cut through them easily, as could his Jackal's rounds. The students were dedicated but inexperienced. Only Master Shan herself represented a serious threat, and even she was working with peacetime Jedi training, not the combat-hardened ruthlessness that Vader had perfected. This was going to be a massacre, professionally executed, tactically sound, but a massacre nonetheless. The thought should have excited him. Violence was his nature, killing his profession, but something about the scene, the children sleeping in their bunks, the students practicing meditation in the courtyard, Master Shan reviewing ancient Jedi texts by lamplight gave him pause. He dismissed the feeling. Sentiment was weakness. Vader had hired him to do a job. The targets were Jedi, Force users who represented a threat to Imperial stability. Their peaceful intentions didn't change that reality, but he delayed the strike. Just for tonight. Vader wanted intelligence first. After all, he could afford one more day of observation. Dawn broke over Dantooine in shades of gold and amber. Alucard, who neither needed nor wanted sleep, had spent the night circling the compound, memorizing every detail. Now he watched from a new vantage point as Master Shan led the morning meditation. "Feel the Force flowing through you," she instructed, her voice carrying that particular calm of experienced teachers. "It connects all living things. The grass beneath you, the animals in the fields, each other. We are all part of the same cosmic web." The students sat in lotus positions, their young faces scrunched in concentration. Some showed natural talent, their presence in the Force brightening as they connected to the energy around them. Others struggled, their frustration palpable even from Alucard's distant position. Master Shan moved among them, offering gentle corrections. "Don't force it, Mira. The Force is not something you control, it's something you flow with. Like water finding its path. I can't feel anything." The girl Mira complained. "Just grass and wind." "Then feel the grass and wind. The Force isn't always dramatic visions or moving objects with your mind. Sometimes it's just being present, aware, connected." Master Shan placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "You're trying too hard. Let go." Alucard recorded this too, though he wasn't sure why Vader would care about meditation instruction. Perhaps the Dark Lord wanted to understand how new Jedi were trained, looking for weaknesses to exploit in future encounters. Or perhaps, and this seemed more likely, Vader simply wanted comprehensive intelligence before sanctioning the killing. The morning progressed. Physical training followed meditation. The students ran obstacle courses, practiced acrobatics enhanced by minor Force assistance, sparred with training sabers that couldn't actually harm. It was all very organized, very pedagogical, very much designed to create a new generation of peacekeepers. It was also tactically inadequate. These children were being trained to maintain peace, not win wars. Against the Empire's stormtroopers, they'd last minutes. Against Inquisitors, seconds. Against Vader himself, they wouldn't even slow him down. Around midday, something changed. A ship descended from orbit, a battered freighter that looked like it had survived more battles than its hull could reasonably accommodate. It landed near the compound, and from its boarding ramp emerged a figure that made Alucard sit up with renewed interest. Kanan Jarrus, the Jedi from Phoenix Squadron, the one Alucard had fought aboard the rebel corvette. Well, Alucard murmured. Small galaxy after all. Kanan was greeted by Master Shan with obvious affection. Embraces were exchanged, words Alucard couldn't quite hear from this distance. The Jedi walked together toward the compound's main structure, deep in conversation that looked serious. Alucard enhanced his audio pickup, focusing on their voices. Reports are spreading, Kanan was saying. Every rebel cell I've contacted has heard rumors. Something hunting Force sensitives. Something the Force can't detect. Master Shan's voice was tight with concern. The Inquisitors? No. Something new. I encountered it myself on Nar Shaddaa. Kanan's tone carried remembered fear. It called itself a vampire, regenerated from wounds that should have been fatal, killed several Inquisitors without apparent effort. And Shan, he paused, it exists completely outside the Force. I tried to sense it, to read its intentions. Nothing. It was like trying to sense a hole in reality. That's impossible. Everything that exists in the Force. I thought so too. But this thing. Kanan shook his head. It claimed to be working for Vader, said it was hunting Jedi for entertainment. It let us escape, but I think that was deliberate. Like it was playing with us. Alucard grinned. So his reputation was spreading. Excellent. Master Shan was silent for a long moment. If what you're describing is real, if there's truly something that can hunt Force sensitives without being detected, then nowhere is safe. Everything we've built here, all the precautions, none of it matters. We need to evacuate, Kanan urged. Scatter the students. Hide them among civilian populations where even this thing couldn't track them all. And abandon their training? Let the Jedi Order die with this generation? Better than letting them all die together. Kanan's frustration was palpable. Master Shan, I respect what you're trying to do, but you're training these kids for a galaxy that doesn't exist anymore. The Empire doesn't want wise peacekeepers, it wants obedient subjects. And things like this vampire don't care about philosophy. They care about results. Master Shan's voice hardened. So you're suggesting we give up? Let fear dictate our choices? I'm suggesting we adapt. The Jedi Code served us for thousands of years, but maybe it's time to acknowledge that the old ways led to our extinction. The old ways were corrupted by politics and pragmatism. If we abandon our principles now, what makes us different from the Sith? Survival, Kanan said bluntly. That's what makes us different. The Sith are still here. We're nearly extinct. Maybe principles are less important than staying alive to actually help people. The argument continued. Philosophical and practical concerns clashing. Alucard listened with growing fascination. This was the heart of it, wasn't it? The fundamental question that defined Force users in this galaxy. Do you maintain principles even when they lead to extinction? Or do you adapt and risk losing what made those principles valuable? He'd seen this debate before, in different forms. The Catholic Church versus Protestant reforms. Traditional vampires versus modern adaptation. Ancient codes of honor versus pragmatic survival. The answer was always the same. The pragmatists survived, and the principled became historical footnotes. As the argument wound down, Master Shan ultimately refusing to evacuate, Kanan reluctantly accepting her decision, Alucard made his choice. He activated his encrypted comlink, The signal boosted through relay satellites to reach Vader's flagship wherever it currently patrolled. "Lord Vader," he said quietly. "Alucard reporting from Dantooine. I have comprehensive intelligence on Master Shan's operation. 20 Force sensitives, 10 adults, 10 juveniles. Training orthodox Jedi philosophy peacekeepers, not warriors. Security is adequate against conventional threats, but vulnerable to force-blind infiltration." Vader's breathing filled the channel. "Understood. Proceed with elimination." Alucard hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then, additional complication. Kanan Jarrus from Phoenix Squadron is currently present. He's warning Master Shan about me specifically. They're debating evacuation. Will they evacuate? Master Shan has refused. Philosophical objection to letting fear dictate tactics. Then her philosophy will kill her. Vader's voice carried cold finality. "Proceed with the mission. All targets are authorized for termination. No survivors. Acknowledged." Alucard paused. "Including the children?" There was a long silence on the channel. When Vader spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "The children are force-sensitive. They will grow into threats if left alive. The Empire cannot afford sentiment." "I'm not sentimental," Alucard replied. "Just clarifying rules of engagement. Wanted to make sure we're both comfortable with how dark this particular operation goes. Comfort is irrelevant. Complete the mission." The comlink went dead. Alucard sat on his hilltop, watching the compound where children practiced lightsaber forms under the patient instruction of adults who genuinely believed they could resurrect an order the galaxy had already buried. He thought about Vader's words, about the Empire's cold pragmatism, about his own nature as a creature whose existence was defined by violence. Then he stood, adjusted his hat, and checked his weapons. The Kazul and Jackal were loaded, though he doubted he'd need them. Against children and peacetime-trained Jedi, his bare hands would suffice. "Nothing personal," he said to the distant compound. "You're all very principled and admirably dedicated. But principles don't stop bullets, and dedication doesn't resurrect the dead." He began walking down the hill toward the compound. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grasslands. In those shadows, Alucard moved like a piece of darkness that had learned to walk, invisible to the force senses that should have detected him, inevitable as gravity. Master Shan was in the courtyard, demonstrating a particularly complex lightsaber form to her older students. She moved with practiced grace, the blue blade of her lightsaber singing through predetermined patterns. The students watched with rapt attention, trying to memorize each movement. None of them noticed the void approaching. None of them felt the blind spot in the Force walking through their security perimeter. None of them sensed the predator until Alucard stood at the courtyard's edge, plainly visible but somehow still unseen by their Force-enhanced awareness. "Good afternoon," Alucard said pleasantly. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Every head turned. Master Shan's lightsaber stayed ignited, but her expression shifted from confusion to recognition to horror as she processed what she was seeing, or rather, what she couldn't sense. "You," Kanan breathed, his hand moving to his own lightsaber. "The vampire, the very same." Alucard spread his arms in theatrical greeting. "I'd apologize for the intrusion, but we both know this moment was inevitable. The moment you refused to evacuate, you guaranteed this outcome." "You were listening to our conversation," Master Shan said, her voice steady despite the fear Alucard could hear in her heartbeat. "How long have you been here?" 3 days. "Very thorough reconnaissance. I can tell you everything about your operation training schedules, security rotations, which students show the most promise." His grin widened. "I've been a very diligent spy." "Why?" The question came from Mira, the young girl who'd struggled with meditation. "Why do you work for the Empire? Why hunt us?" Alucard looked at her, truly looked, seeing the genuine confusion in her young face. She didn't understand hate yet, didn't comprehend that some beings killed not from ideology but from nature. "Because I'm a monster," he said simply. "And monsters do what they're designed to do. You're Jedi, even if you're trying very hard to be peaceful ones. That makes you targets. Nothing personal. There's always a choice, Master Shan said. You can choose not to do this. Oh, I absolutely can, but I won't. Alucard's expression shifted, the theatrical amusement draining away to reveal something colder beneath. You see, Master Shan, I've spent 500 years existing as a creature of violence. I've tried righteousness. I've tried redemption. I've tried every variation of being better that well-meaning people have suggested. None of it changed what I am. So I stopped pretending and embraced my nature. Then you've chosen damnation. I chose honesty. He pulled out both pistols, the Kazul and Jackal gleaming in the afternoon light. But I'll give you credit, you've got 3 seconds to decide how this goes. Option 1. Surrender peacefully. Let me execute you quickly and professionally. Option 2. Fight back. Make this entertaining, and I'll make sure the children die last so they can watch their teachers fail to protect them. The courtyard erupted into motion. Master Shan surged forward, her lightsaber a blue arc of desperate attack. Kanan flanked right, his own green blade igniting. The older students moved to protect the younger ones, forming a defensive perimeter with their training sabers. Alucard's grin returned in full force. Option 2 it is. Excellent choice. And the massacre began. Master Shan was good. Better than the Inquisitors Alucard had killed on Nar Shaddaa. Better than Kanan in their first encounter. She moved like water given deadly purpose. Her lightsaber formed flawless Sarisu mixed with Ataru. Defensive precision combined with aggressive counters. Every strike was calculated to disable rather than kill, seeking to end the fight without death. It was beautiful, skilled, and completely inadequate. Alucard didn't dodge. He let her lightsaber carve through his shoulder, through his chest, the plasma blade burning holes that should have dropped any living being instantly. He kept walking forward, his regeneration already working, flesh knitting back together even as she struck again and again. Impressive technique, he commented, catching her blade with his bare hand mid-swing. The lightsaber burned through his palm, but he held on, pulling her off balance. Decades of training evident in every movement, but you're still fighting like this is a duel, like there are rules. He kicked her not with his full supernatural strength, but enough to send her flying backward across the courtyard. She rolled with the impact, came up in a defensive stance, her breathing controlled despite the shock. Kanan attacked from behind, his green blade aimed at Alucard's neck. The vampire turned, faster than the Jedi's force-enhanced reflexes could track, and caught the lightsaber between his hands. The blade hissed against his palms, burning through flesh, but Alucard twisted, wrenching the weapon from Kanan's grip. "You know," Alucard said, examining the captured lightsaber, "I've been collecting these. They make excellent trophies." He deactivated the blade, clipped it to his belt beside the 2 Inquisitor lightsabers he'd claimed earlier. "Thank you for the donation." Kanan stumbled back, weaponless, his mind racing through options. Use the Force, throw debris, create barriers, anything to slow this creature down. He reached out with telekinesis, hurling training equipment, benches, even chunks of the compound's walls at Alucard. The vampire walked through the telekinetic assault like it was a gentle breeze. Objects struck him, crushed him, buried him under tons of debris. He emerged from each impact grinning wider, his coat tattered but his body already healing. "Your space magic is very impressive," Alucard said. "But it's designed to affect the physical world, and I exist on the line between physical and supernatural. You can hurt me, you can slow me down, but you can't stop me." Master Shan rejoined the fight, her lightsaber work becoming more aggressive, more desperate. She aimed for his head, his heart, joints that should disable even if they didn't kill. Each strike connected, each wound healed within seconds. Behind them, the older students were shepherding the younger ones toward the compound's emergency bunker. Good tactical thinking get the non-combatants to safety while the masters bought time. Alucard noted their movement, but didn't interfere yet. Let them think they had a chance. Fear was so much more potent when hope died slowly. "Kelvan, get them into the bunker," Master Shan shouted to the Twi'lek boy. "Seal it from the inside. Don't open it for anyone except—" Alucard moved. Supernatural speed carried him across the courtyard faster than eyes could track. He appeared in front of Kelvan, who'd just reached the bunker door with 5 younger students. The boy's hand was on the control panel, his young face set with determination. "Hello," Alucard said pleasantly. "Going somewhere?" Kelvan's lightsaber, a training saber, unable to cut but capable of delivering painful shocks, snapped into his hand. The boy thrust it forward with respectable technique, aiming for Alucard's center mass. The training blade struck home, electricity coursing through the vampire's body. Alucard looked down at the weapon embedded in his chest. "That tingles." He grabbed the lightsaber, yanked it from Kelvan's grip, and crushed it in his fist. Sparks flew as the training weapon shattered. "But I'm afraid playtime is over. Run!" Kelvan shouted to the younger students, his voice cracking with fear but holding firm. The children scattered, their force-enhanced speed carrying them away from the bunker toward the open grasslands. Alucard let them run. For now, Master Shan's lightsaber took his head off at the neck. It was a perfect strike. The blade passed through flesh and bone with surgical precision, and Alucard's head tumbled to the ground, still wearing his orange glasses, still grinning. "Finally," Master Shan breathed. The headless body picked up its own head. Shadows erupted from the neck stump, tendrils of darkness that flowed like liquid midnight. They grabbed the severed head and pulled it back into place, flesh reconnecting with wet, organic sounds that made several students gag. "Over?" Alucard finished her sentence. "You've already tried decapitation once. Didn't work then, won't work now." His head, now fully reattached, rolled its neck experimentally. "Though I'll admit, you've got excellent form. Whoever taught you was a master of their craft." "Master Windu," she said quietly. "He taught me Varpad before the Clone Wars." "Ah, yes. I read about him in Imperial archives. Fell to his death after trying to arrest the Emperor. Tragic." Alucard pulled out the Kazoo. "But his techniques won't save you from this." The hand cannon roared. Master Shan moved to deflect. Jedi could deflect blaster bolts, so surely she could deflect bullets. Her lightsaber intercepted the round in mid-flight. The blessed silver bullet, designed to kill supernatural creatures and enhanced by Imperial ballistics technology, passed through the lightsaber blade as if it wasn't there and punched through her shoulder. Master Shan screamed, her arm going limp, the lightsaber falling from nerveless fingers. "Kinetic projectiles," Alucard explained conversationally. "Your laser swords can deflect energy weapons, but solid matter with sufficient velocity? That just goes right through." He fired again. This round took her in the leg, dropping her to her knees. Cannon charged, weaponless but desperate, channeling the force into his fists. He struck Alucard with enhanced strength blows that could shatter stone, backed by every ounce of force power he could muster. The vampire's ribs cracked, his jaw dislocated, his nose shattered into cartilage and blood, and then he grabbed Kanan by the throat and lifted him off his feet. "Admirable effort," Alucard said through his broken jaw, which was already resetting itself. "You're fighting for something greater than yourself, protecting the innocent. Very heroic." He tightened his grip. "But heroism without power is just tragedy waiting to happen." "Let him go," Master Shan gasped, trying to crawl toward her fallen lightsaber despite her wounds. "Take me. Just let the students go." Alucard looked at her, genuinely considering. "You know, I almost respect that. The selfless sacrifice play. Very Jedi. But here's the thing," he tossed Kanan aside like a discarded toy. "Vader ordered no survivors, and I'm many things, but unreliable isn't one of them." He turned his attention to the fleeing students. They'd scattered across the grasslands, using force-enhanced speed to put distance between themselves and the compound. Smart, tactical thinking, but ultimately futile. Alucard could hear each heartbeat, track each panicked breath. They might as well have been standing still. "This is the part where I demonstrate why running is pointless," Alucard announced. Then he vanished, dissolving into shadows and reforming 100 meters away, directly in the path of 3 running students. The children skidded to a halt, their young faces painted with terror. 2 girls, 1 boy, none older than 12. They looked at him with the kind of fear that comes from realizing your nightmares have become real. "Please," one of the girls whispered. "We haven't done anything wrong. You're force sensitive. That's enough." Alucard crouched to their eye level, his expression almost gentle. "Would it help if I said this wasn't personal? That I don't hate you? That I'm simply doing what I was hired to do?" "No," the boy said, his voice breaking. "It wouldn't help at all. Honest answer. I appreciate that." Alucard stood. "Close your eyes. It'll be faster that way." "No." The shout came from Kelvan, who'd circled back, who'd chosen to fight rather than flee. The Twi'lek boy charged with nothing but his bare hands and desperate courage, channeling the force into a telekinetic blast that actually staggered Alucard back a step. "Well," the vampire said, genuinely impressed. "That was unexpected. You've got power, kid. Raw, untrained, but definitely there." He tilted his head. "In another life, you might have become something impressive." "I won't let you hurt them," Kelvan said, positioning himself between Alucard and the 3 younger students. His hands trembled, but his stance was firm. "You'll have to go through me, obviously." Alucard started forward. "But I'll make you a deal. If you can land 1 hit, just 1, I'll let these 3 run. They won't survive the day, but they'll have a few more hours. What do you say?" Kelvan didn't waste breath on responses. He attacked with everything he had: force-enhanced speed, telekinetic strikes, even crude force lightning that sparked painfully between his fingers. It was impressive for someone so young, evidence of raw potential that Master Shan must have been excited to train. Alucard let him try. Let the boy exhaust himself, throwing everything he had learned at an enemy that regenerated from every wound, that walked through every force technique, that existed outside the rules the boy had been taught governed reality. When Kelvan finally collapsed from exhaustion, his hands burned from improper force lightning technique, his body trembling from channeling more power than his young frame could handle. Alucard crouched beside him. "You did well," the vampire said quietly. "Better than many adults I've killed. Your masters should have been proud." "Should have," Kelvan gasped. Alucard gestured back toward the compound. Through the distance, Kelvan could see Master Shan lying motionless in a pool of blood, Kanan struggling to rise from where he'd been thrown. The other students who'd tried to defend the compound lay scattered across the courtyard. "No," Kelvan whispered. "No, no, no. This is the part where you learn the galaxy's hardest lesson," Alucard said, almost gently. "The Force doesn't protect the righteous. Power doesn't flow to the deserving. Good people die, bad people survive, and the universe doesn't care about justice." He stood. "Your masters tried to teach you otherwise. They lied. Not maliciously, they genuinely believed in those principles. But belief doesn't make something true." "You're a monster," Kelvan said. "Yes, but at least I'm an honest monster." Alucard looked at the 3 younger students who'd frozen in terror throughout the fight. "Run. You have my permission. It won't save you, but it'll give you something to do besides standing there crying." They ran. Shadows consumed them before they'd gone 10 meters. Alucard's familiars, manifestations of absorbed souls materializing from darkness to drag them screaming into oblivion. Kelvan tried to rise, to fight, to do anything, but his body had nothing left. He'd pushed himself beyond his limits and paid the price. He could only watch as Alucard turned back to him, those orange glasses reflecting the afternoon sun. "Any last words?" Alucard asked. "I don't usually offer, but you earned them." Kelvan thought for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "The Force will be with us, always. You can kill us, but you can't kill what we represent. beautiful sentiment, functionally meaningless, but beautiful. Alucard raised the kazoo. Goodbye, Kelvan. For what it's worth, you would have made an excellent Jedi. The shot echoed across the grasslands. By the time Alucard returned to the compound, the sun was setting. Bodies lay scattered across the courtyard, students who'd fought to the end, their training sabers clutched in dead hands, their young faces frozen in expressions of determination and terror. Master Shan still lived. Barely. She lay in a spreading pool of her own blood, both legs destroyed by Castle rounds, her lightsaber arm shattered. She looked up as Alucard approached, her eyes carrying the empty horror of someone who'd lost everything. All of them? She whispered. All of them, Alucard confirmed. The students in the bunker tried to seal themselves in. I melted through the door. The ones who ran for the grasslands, my familiars, hunted them down. Very thorough, very professional. He crouched beside her. You lasted the longest. Impressive vitality. Why? Her voice was hollow. Why work for the Empire? Why kill children? For credits? For power? For entertainment? Alucard said simply. And because this is what I am, I'm a creature of violence wearing human shape. Trying to be anything else would be a lie. Then, you're beyond redemption. Probably. But here's the interesting thing. Master Shan, I never asked for redemption. That's a concept for people who regret their choices. I don't regret mine. I just accept what I am and act accordingly. He stood. You, on the other hand, spent 20 years trying to resurrect an order that the galaxy had already decided was extinct. You trained children in philosophies that got their predecessors killed. You prioritized principles over pragmatism. Better to die with principles than survive without them. And now you have both dying with your principles intact. Congratulations. Very philosophically consistent. Alucard raised the jackal, the larger of his two pistols. This probably won't comfort you, but your students died bravely. They fought well. Some of them might have become genuinely dangerous if they'd lived long enough. I'll see you in the Force, Master Shan said, her voice fading. When you die, however long from now, the Force will judge you for what you've done. I certainly hope so. I have questions about this cosmic telephone network of yours. Alucard aimed carefully. Any actual last words? Something profound for me to report to Vader? Master Shan was silent for a long moment. Then, tell Vader that Anakin Skywalker died on Mustafar, but the man who killed him is still alive, wearing his corpse. Alucard's grin faded slightly. Cryptic, I like it. He pulled the trigger. The jackal's report was deafening in the quiet courtyard. When the echo faded, Master Shan was gone. Her body still, but her presence, even the absence Alucard couldn't properly sense, vanished from the Force like a light being snuffed out. Kanan Jarrus crawled across the courtyard, his legs broken, his Force connection scrambled from massive trauma. He'd watched everything: the students dying, Master Shan's execution, the systematic dismantling of everything they'd tried to build. His face was a mask of grief and impotent rage. You're still alive, Alucard observed. I'm actually impressed. You should be dead from shock alone. Kill me, Kanan gasped. Just finish it. No, Kanan blinked, confused despite his pain. What? I'm letting you live. Again, Alucard holstered his weapons. You get to be the survivor, the one who tells the story, the warning that spreads across the Rebel Alliance about what happens when Force users think they're safe. That's worse than killing me. I know. That's why I'm doing it. Alucard pulled out a medical kit, Imperial issue, designed for field stabilization, and tossed it beside Kanan. Patch yourself up. Use your comlink to call for extraction. By the time anyone arrives, I'll be gone. Why? Kanan's voice was raw with grief. Why let me live? Because you're interesting. Because you'll tell stories about me that'll make other Force users paranoid. Because the best hunting comes when prey knows a predator exists but can't sense it coming. Alucard started walking toward his shuttle, which he'd hidden several kilometers away. And because part of me, the part that still occasionally pretends to have standards, doesn't want to kill a broken man when the killing's already done. You're insane, obviously. But I'm consistent in my insanity. That's got to count for something. Alucard paused at the courtyard's edge, looking back at the carnage. 24 sensitives reduced to corpses, an entire training compound destroyed, a Jedi Master's final attempt to resurrect her order extinguished in a single afternoon. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it just felt empty. He dismissed the feeling. Sentiment was weakness. He'd done his job with professional efficiency. Vader would be pleased. The Empire would be satisfied. That was all that mattered. Kanan Jarrus. Alucard called back. Master Shan's last words were for Vader. Should I deliver them accurately, or do you have any additions? Kanan, wrapping his shattered legs with Bacta bandages, looked up with hollow eyes. Tell him the Jedi Order will survive. Tell him we'll keep fighting, keep rebuilding, no matter how many monsters he sends. Inspiring. Functionally delusional, but inspiring. Alucard's grin returned. I'll be sure to include that in my report. He'll enjoy the irony. The vampire disappeared into the setting sun, leaving Kanan alone among the dead. The Jedi activated his comlink with trembling hands, sent out a distress signal that would take hours to reach any rebel assets, and then sat among the bodies of children he'd failed to protect. Master Shan had been right about one thing. The Force connected all living things. But what she hadn't mentioned, what perhaps the Jedi had never fully accepted, was that it also recorded death. Every extinguished life sent ripples through the cosmic web. Every murdered student left an echo. And somewhere in those echoes, the Force itself seemed to shudder with recognition. Something truly outside its influence had just proven it could kill Force users with impunity. The blind spot had teeth. Aboard Vader's Star Destroyer, Alucard delivered his report via holotransmission. The Dark Lord's mask regarded him with its characteristic impassive menace. All targets eliminated, Alucard concluded. Master Shan, 20 students ranging from adult to child. Compound destroyed. One survivor, Kanan Jarrus, left alive to spread word about the operation. Minimal complications. You were supposed to kill them all, Vader noted. I did kill them all. I just let one live afterward. There's a distinction. Alucard leaned back in his chair. Besides, a living witness serves the Empire better than a complete massacre. Now every Force sensitive in the rebellion will know something hunts them that they can't detect. Paranoia is a weapon too, Lord Vader. Vader was silent for a long moment, his breathing apparatus cycling. Master Shan's last words? She said to tell you that Anakin Skywalker died on Mustafar, but the man who killed him is still alive, wearing his corpse. Alucard tilted his head. Does that mean something to you? It seemed important to her. The temperature on the bridge dropped perceptibly. Vader's hand clenched, the servos in his mechanical fingers whining under the pressure. When he spoke, his voice was colder than the void between stars. Master Shan was delusional. Anakin Skywalker is dead. I killed him myself, if you say so. Alucard knew not to press. Oh, and Kanan Jarrus said the Jedi Order will survive, that they'll keep fighting no matter how many monsters you send. Thought you'd enjoy that bit of defiant optimism. The Jedi are extinct. What remains are scattered survivors clinging to failed philosophies. Vader's mask turned slightly, as if looking at something beyond Alucard's transmission. You performed adequately. Return to the fleet. There are more targets. Always are. Alucard grinned. This galaxy is wonderfully full of people who need killing. I'm starting to think taking this job was the best decision I've made in centuries. The transmission cut off. Alucard sat in his shuttle, the stars streaming past as he made his way back to Imperial space, and reflected on the day's work. 20 dead, 1 survivor to spread terror. A successful mission by any objective metric. So why did Master Shan's words keep echoing in his mind? The Force will be with us, always. Ridiculous. The Force was just energy. It didn't care about justice or good or evil. It was a tool, nothing more. But her students had died believing in it, had died thinking their sacrifice meant something. And Kanan Jarrus, broken and grieving, would tell stories about this day that would inspire others to keep fighting. Maybe that was the real difference between him and them. They died for something. He just killed because that's what he was. The thought should have satisfied him. Instead, it left him feeling oddly hollow as his shuttle carried him deeper into the Empire's cold embrace. 3 months after Dantooine, Alucard had become the Empire's most effective ghost. No official records acknowledged his existence. No Imperial rosters listed his name, but across the Outer Rim, rebel cells whispered about the Force-blind hunter who killed Jedi and disappeared like smoke. Intelligence officers called him the Void. Surviving Force sensitives called him Nightmare given form. Vader called him useful. The Dark Lord's private operations room aboard the Executor, his new flagship, even more massive than the standard Star Destroyer, displayed holographic markers across a galactic map. Each marker represented a successful operation. Jedi Masters eliminated, rebel Force-sensitive networks dismantled, threats neutralized before they could grow into problems. Alucard stood before the display, his coat repaired from countless engagements, 3 additional lightsabers now clipped to his belt like macabre trophies. He'd been hunting for 13 consecutive weeks, barely pausing between missions, driven by a restlessness he couldn't quite articulate. 12 Jedi confirmed eliminated, Vader said, reviewing the casualty reports. 4 rebel Force-sensitive cells destroyed. 2 dark side cults that might have challenged Imperial authority exterminated. Impressive efficiency. I live to serve, Alucard replied with theatrical insincerity. Though I'll admit, the work is becoming repetitive. Force users stop being entertaining when they all react the same way. Disbelief, then fear, then desperate fighting that accomplishes nothing. You sound bored. I am bored. These targets are too easy. They can't sense me, can't adapt fast enough, can't do anything except die while looking shocked. Alucard gestured to the holographic display. Where's the challenge? Where's the opponent who makes me actually work for the kill? Vader's mask turned toward him, that expressionless gaze, somehow conveying consideration. You want a more dangerous assignment. I want an interesting assignment. Dangerous is relative when you're functionally immortal. Alucard leaned against the display console. Give me something that requires actual effort. A target who's paranoid enough, skilled enough, or connected enough that hunting them becomes an actual challenge rather than an execution. The Dark Lord was silent for a long moment, his breathing apparatus providing rhythm to his thoughts. Then he pressed a control, and the galactic map zoomed to the core worlds, focusing on a location that made even Alucard raise an eyebrow. Coruscant, Vader said. Imperial Center, the heart of the Empire itself. Bold choice for a hunting ground. There is a threat on Coruscant, one I cannot eliminate through conventional means. Vader's mechanical hand gestured, and the hologram shifted to display Imperial intelligence files. Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan, publicly loyal to the Empire, privately one of the rebellion's key founders and supporters. Alucard studied the files. Organa was careful, no direct ties, no obvious treachery, everything filtered through intermediaries and plausible deniability. He'd been playing the political game for decades, survived the Clone Wars, the Empire's rise, the Jedi Purge. He was smart, connected, and paranoid enough to have lasted this long. You want me to assassinate an Imperial senator, Alucard said. In the Empire's capital, under the Emperor's nose. I want you to make it look like natural causes. A heart attack, perhaps. Something that cannot be traced to Imperial action. Vader's voice carried dark satisfaction. Organa is too well connected to arrest without proof, too careful to provide that proof. But his elimination would cripple the rebellion's political support network. Why not just have the Emperor execute him? Your master can do that, surely. The Emperor prefers to maintain the Senate's illusion of independence. Executing senators without trial would undermine that illusion. Vader's mask tilted slightly. But natural causes? Tragic, but unpreventable. No political complications. Alucard grinned. His interest genuinely peaked for the first time in weeks. A stealth assassination in the most heavily monitored city in the galaxy, targeting someone important enough that his death will send shockwaves through both the Empire and Rebellion. Now that's entertaining. There are complications. Organa is Force-sensitive minor talent, but enough to sense danger through the Force. His security detail includes former Clone Wars veterans with counter-assassination training. His movements are monitored by Imperial intelligence, rebel spies, and his own paranoid protocols. But he can't sense me, Alucard finished. His Force sensitivity is useless against something that exists outside the Force's awareness. His security is watching for conventional threats, and his paranoia, however justified, can't account for a predator he doesn't know exists. Precisely. Vader handed him a data chip. Complete intelligence package. His schedule, security protocols, known associates. Study it. Plan carefully. This is not a battlefield, this is political assassination disguised as natural death. Alucard took the chip, already formulating approaches. When do you want it done? Within 2 weeks. The Senate is in session. Organa will be on Coruscant, accessible. Vader's voice carried warning weight. But Alucard, if you are discovered, if this operation is traced back to Imperial involvement, I will deny all knowledge of your existence. You will be alone. Wouldn't be the first time. Alucard headed for the exit, then paused. Question: why trust me with this? You could hire conventional assassins, spies, political operators who actually understand subtlety. Because conventional assassins can be interrogated, spies can be turned, political operators leave trails. Vader's breathing cycled meaningfully. You are unkillable, untraceable, and exist outside every intelligence network in the galaxy. If you fail and are captured, you simply escape. If you succeed, no one will ever prove you were there. So I'm not just a hunter, I'm the ultimate deniable asset. You are a weapon I can aim and claim never existed. That makes you invaluable. Alucard laughed, genuine amusement mixing with dark appreciation. You know, Lord Vader, I'm beginning to understand why you run the Empire's operations. That's beautifully ruthless thinking. I learned from the best, Vader said quietly. Too quietly, as if remembering someone else who'd taught him ruthlessness before the cybernetics, before the mask, before Darth Vader existed. Alucard pretended not to notice the momentary vulnerability. I'll handle Organa. Clean, professional, untraceable. Consider it done. He left Vader alone in the operations room, the Dark Lord standing before his galactic display, like a monument to controlled violence. Behind his mask, thoughts churned memories of other political assassinations, other moments when the ends justified the means, other times when he'd compromised principles for pragmatic necessity. Master Shan's words echoed. Anakin Skywalker died on Mustafar, but the man who killed him is still alive, wearing his corpse. Vader crushed the thought with practiced efficiency. Sentiment was weakness. Anakin was dead. Only Vader remained. But late at night, in his meditation chamber, when the pain from his cybernetics became overwhelming and the dark side offered cold comfort instead of warmth, he wondered if Master Shan had been right after all. Coruscant was everything Alucard had imagined and worse. The planet-wide city stretched in every direction, towers piercing atmosphere, traffic lanes stacked kilometers high, trillions of beings compressed into an urban sprawl that made Nar Shaddaa look provincial. The Empire's heart pulsed with bureaucratic efficiency and authoritarian control. Every surface monitored, every citizen tracked. It was surveillance, dystopia made manifest, and Alucard found it simultaneously impressive and suffocating. He'd arrived disguised as a mid-level Imperial logistics officer, false credentials provided by Vader's intelligence network, appearance altered enough that casual observation wouldn't match his distinctive coat and hat. The vampire had learned that sometimes the best disguise was banality. Nobody looked twice at boring bureaucrats. Senator Organa's schedule was predictable because it had to be public figures couldn't hide effectively. He maintained offices in the Senate district, a private residence in the upper levels, and frequented diplomatic venues where rebellion business could be discussed under the guise of legitimate political networking. Alucard spent 3 days observing. He watched Organa navigate Senate politics with practiced ease, saw him meet with other senators whose rebel sympathies were carefully hidden, noted the security details that surrounded him constantly. The man was good, every conversation was monitored, every associate vetted, every movement calculated to avoid suspicion. But he had one weakness. He trusted the Force's warnings. When his minor Force sensitivity tingled with premonitions of danger, he listened. It had saved his life during assassination attempts, warned him of Imperial investigations, guided his survival through 2 decades of playing both sides. Against Alucard, it was silent. On the 4th night, Organa attended a diplomatic reception in the Senate Tower's upper levels. Wealthy senators, corporate representatives, and Imperial officials mingled in carefully orchestrated social hierarchy. Alucard entered through service corridors, his forged credentials getting him past security checkpoints designed to stop unauthorized personnel but utterly blind to his true nature. He found Organa on a balcony overlooking Coruscant's endless cityscape, the senator having stepped away from the reception's noise for a moment of quiet contemplation. The man looked older than his intelligence photos. The weight of maintaining dual loyalties had aged him, carved lines of stress into his face. Alucard approached from behind, his footsteps silent, his presence a void in the Force that Organa's senses couldn't detect. He stood beside the senator, both of them looking out over the glittering sprawl of Imperial power. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Alucard said conversationally. "All that power, all that control, compressed into one planet. Makes you wonder how long it can last." Organa turned, surprised but not alarmed after all. This was a secured diplomatic reception. Only authorized personnel could access the balcony. "I'm sorry, have we met?" "No. But I know who you are, Senator. Bail Organa of Alderaan. War hero. Respected politician. Secret rebel supporter." Alucard's grin was sharp. "Complicated life you're living." Organa's hand drifted toward a concealed panic button in his jacket. Alucard could hear his heartbeat accelerate, smell the adrenaline spike. But the senator's voice remained calm, trained by decades of political maneuvering. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't. Plausible deniability is a survival skill." Alucard pulled out a small device, Imperial issue, designed to jam communications within a 5-meter radius. He activated it, and Organa's panic button became useless. "But we both know the truth. You've been funding the rebellion since its inception. Your adopted daughter is one of their key operatives. You've survived this long by being paranoid and careful. If you're Imperial intelligence, this conversation is meaningless without proof." "I'm not Imperial intelligence. I'm something worse." Alucard removed his orange glasses, revealing eyes that reflected light like a predator's. "I'm the thing that hunts Force sensitives, the blind spot your cosmic telephone network can't detect. The monster that's been killing Jedi across the Outer Rim." Organa's face went pale. "The Void. Canon Jarrus warned us about you." "Did he? How thoughtful. I do enjoy my reputation preceding me." Alucard leaned against the balcony railing. "But here's your problem, Senator. You can't sense me through the Force. You can't call for help, communications are jammed. And if you try to run, I'll catch you before you reach the door. You're trapped with a predator, and all your survival skills are useless. Then kill me and be done with it." Organa straightened, facing his death with the dignity of someone who'd accepted it might come eventually. "I won't beg. I won't betray my allies. Do what you came to do. See, that's the problem. I can't just kill you." Alucard's expression shifted to something almost apologetic. Vader wants this to look like natural causes, a heart attack, maybe. Something that doesn't scream assassination. Which means I need to be creative. He reached out faster than Organa could react, his hand closing around the senator's chest, not crushing, not puncturing, just holding, his supernatural senses feeling the rhythm of Organa's heartbeat through flesh and bone. I can hear your heart, Alucard said softly. Every contraction, every pulse of blood through your chambers. It's an elegant organ, really. Remarkably efficient for keeping a body alive, but also remarkably fragile when you know exactly where to apply pressure. Organa tried to pull away, but Alucard's grip was absolute. The senator's force sensitivity screamed warnings now, but too late. Too unfocused, it couldn't tell him what was happening, because the thing causing it didn't exist in the force's awareness. Here's what's going to happen, Alucard continued, his voice carrying dark professionalism. I'm going to trigger a cardiac event, a massive one. Your heart will stop, your brain will be deprived of oxygen, and you'll die within minutes. Medical examination will show nothing suspicious, just a tragic heart attack. Stress of Senate duties, perhaps. Advancing age. These things happen. The rebellion will survive without me. Organa gasped. Probably, but you won't be there to see it. Alucard's grip tightened infinitesimally, his supernatural senses guiding his touch to exactly the right pressure points. Any last words? I don't usually offer, but you've earned them. Organa was silent for a moment, his breathing labored, his face contorted with pain as Alucard's touch disrupted his heart's rhythm. When he spoke, his voice was steady despite everything. Tell my daughter. Tell Leia that I'm proud of her. That the fight was worth it. That hope survives, even when we don't. Alucard's grin faded completely. You know I'm not going to deliver that message. I know. But I had to say it anyway. Organa's eyes met Alucard's, clear despite the pain. You're working for monsters. Eventually, that truth will catch up to you. I am a monster. That truth caught up to me 500 years ago. Alucard squeezed, and Senator Bail Organa's heart stopped. The man's eyes widened in shock, his body convulsing as cardiac arrest triggered cascading system failures. He collapsed, and Alucard lowered him gently to the balcony floor, arranging his body in a position consistent with sudden heart failure. The vampire deactivated the jamming device, straightened his clothes, and walked calmly back into the diplomatic reception. Behind him, Senator Organa lay dead, his face peaceful despite the violence of his passing. Someone would find him soon. There would be shock, grief, emergency medical response that would arrive too late. Autopsies would show nothing suspicious. The Empire would issue condolences. The rebellion would lose a key supporter, and no one would ever know an assassin had been there. Alucard left the Senate Tower through the same service corridors he'd used to enter, his disguise still intact, his presence unremarkable among thousands of bureaucrats and functionaries. By the time Organa's body was discovered, he was in a transit ship heading off-world, his mission complete. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow. Organa's last words echoed, "Tell Leia that I'm proud of her, that the fight was worth it, that hope survives even when we don't. Hope." As if that mattered. As if dying for principles made death meaningful rather than just final. But the words stayed with him as his ship carried him away from Coruscant's glittering sprawl, back toward the darkness of space where Vader's Star Destroyer waited with new targets, new missions, new kills that would be efficient and professional and ultimately empty. "It's done," Alucard reported via encrypted holotransmission. Vader's mask regarded him from the display, impassive as ever. "Senator Organa is dead. Cardiac arrest, no suspicious circumstances. Clean, professional, untraceable. The Empire thanks you for your service," Vader said formally. Then, after a pause, "You seem troubled, do I?" Alucard forced his grin back into place. Must be the lighting. You hesitated. In your description, I heard something unusual. Doubt. Perhaps. Not doubt. Just. Alucard struggled for words. He died for something. Believed in it enough to die with dignity. I've killed hundreds of beings over 5 centuries, but most of them died afraid, or angry, or begging. He died at peace. That's unusual. Vader was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried unexpected weight. The truly dangerous enemies are not the ones who fight from fear or hatred. They are the ones who fight because they believe their cause justifies any sacrifice. Those are the enemies who will die smiling, knowing their deaths inspire others. Is that what scares the Empire? People who can't be intimidated? The Empire fears nothing, but the Emperor understands that martyrs are more dangerous than warriors. Dead heroes inspire movements. Living cowards spread fear. Vader's mask tilted slightly. You gave the rebellion a martyr, Alucard. Organa's death will inspire more resistance, not less. Then why have me kill him? Because despite the inspiration, the rebellion has lost a key strategist, funding source, and political shield. Short-term pain for long-term gain. Vader's breathing cycled. War is not about eliminating all enemies. It is about making the cost of resistance higher than the value of rebellion. Alucard was quiet, processing. Then, you sound like you learned that lesson personally. I have learned many lessons, most of them painful. Vader terminated the connection before Alucard could press further. The vampire sat in his ship's cockpit, surrounded by the infinite darkness of hyperspace, and contemplated his situation. He was Vader's weapon, the Empire's ghost, a creature who killed efficiently, professionally, without remorse. So why did Organa's final words keep echoing? Hope survives even when we don't. Ridiculous. Hope was a delusion. The galaxy ran on power, fear, and the strong dominating the weak. Everything else was just pretty words people told themselves before they died. But if hope was meaningless, why did the Empire work so hard to crush it? Why did Vader need someone like Alucard to kill people like Organa? If the rebellion was truly hopeless, it would simply collapse under its own futility. Unless hope was actually dangerous. Unless belief, even irrational belief in impossible causes, actually mattered. Alucard dismissed the thought. Philosophy was for people with too much time and too little purpose. He had work to do. Vader would have more targets, more Jedi to hunt, more threats to eliminate. That was what he was. That was all he needed to be. But late at night, or what passed for night in the timeless void of hyperspace, Alucard found himself thinking about Organa's daughter, Leia. Whoever she was, wherever she was, she'd never know her father's last words, would never know he died proud of her, would only know that he was gone, another casualty in the endless war. That should have meant nothing to a creature who'd spent 5 centuries killing without attachment. So why did it bother him? He crushed the thought. Sentiment was weakness. He'd learned that lesson long ago. Feeling guilt was pointless when you were fundamentally incapable of change. The ship continued through hyperspace, carrying Alucard deeper into the Empire's service, further from any possibility of redemption he'd stopped believing in centuries ago. Behind him, on Coruscant, the galaxy learned of Senator Organa's tragic death. The rebellion mourned. The Empire expressed condolences, and somewhere in the force, that vast cosmic web that bound all living things, a disturbance rippled outward as another light was extinguished by something that existed in darkness. The blind spot had claimed another victim, but this time, for the first time in decades, the blind spot itself wondered if there was more to existence than efficient hunting and professional violence. The thought was uncomfortable, unwelcome, and utterly impossible to dismiss. The galaxy didn't end with a bang or a whimper when Alucard arrived. It simply learned to accommodate a new kind of nightmare. In the months following Senator Organa's assassination, the vampire's legend grew like a shadow cast across the Force itself. Rebel cells whispered his name in fear. Imperial officers who knew of his existence kept that knowledge classified. and Darth Vader continued to deploy him with surgical precision against threats conventional forces couldn't touch. But something had changed. Something subtle yet profound in the creature who existed outside all rules. It began with small deviations from mission parameters. A rebel force sensitive left alive when termination was authorized. A dark side cultist interrogated rather than immediately executed. Intelligence gathered that wasn't strictly necessary for the mission. Alucard told himself it was professional curiosity, a desire to understand this galaxy better before he grew bored and moved on. He was lying to himself. The truth, uncomfortable, undeniable, was that Bail Organa's final words had infected him like a virus his immortal body couldn't purge. Hope survives even when we don't. The statement shouldn't have mattered. Hope was a delusion. Faith was weakness. Principles were luxuries that got people killed, yet beings kept fighting for them anyway. Kept dying with dignity rather than begging. Kept believing that their sacrifices meant something beyond the immediate tactical reality of their deaths. It was irrational. It was stupid. It was entirely illogical. And it was everywhere. Master Shan training Jedi, knowing the Empire would find them eventually. Kelvan charging an unkillable monster to protect younger students. Organa dying at peace because he believed his cause would outlive him. Kanan Jarrus, broken and grieving, still transmitting warnings to other rebels despite knowing it painted a target on his back. These weren't isolated incidents of foolish heroism. This was a pattern, a thread of defiant hope woven through a galaxy the Empire had conquered but couldn't quite crush. Alucard found himself at a crossroads he hadn't expected to encounter in this strange new universe. He was Vader's weapon, efficient, reliable, perfectly suited to eliminate threats the Empire couldn't handle through conventional means. The work was engaging enough, the violence satisfied his nature, and the Empire's resources gave him access to entertainment across thousands of star systems. But for the first time in 5 centuries, the professional monster wondered if efficiency and violence were enough. He stood on the observation deck of an Imperial Star Destroyer, watching a planet below some world he'd just cleared of Jedi presence, another successful mission in an endless series. His reflection in the viewport showed what he'd always been, a creature in human shape, wearing the clothes and mannerisms of civilization while being fundamentally inhuman beneath. "You look contemplative." Vader's voice came from behind him, mechanical breathing announcing his presence. The Dark Lord approached, his cape flowing with each measured step. "Unusual for you, just thinking about philosophy," Alucard replied without turning. "Specifically, the philosophy of hope. Why beings cling to it, even when logic says it's pointless. Hope is a tool. The rebellion uses it to inspire resistance. We use fear to ensure compliance. Both are means to an end." Vader stood beside him, 2 predators watching the galaxy turn beneath them. "Why does it trouble you?" "Because I don't understand it. I understand violence, it's my nature. I understand fear, it's a survival mechanism. But hope, believing in victory against impossible odds, dying for principles that won't resurrect you." Alucard finally turned to face Vader. "That's not logical, yet it works. Somehow, impossibly, it keeps working." Vader was silent for a long moment. Behind his mask, thoughts churned memories of a young Jedi who'd once believed in hope, who'd thought love and faith could overcome any obstacle. That belief had been burned away on Mustafar, replaced with the cold pragmatism of Darth Vader, or so he'd thought. "Hope is dangerous precisely because it is illogical," Vader said finally. "Rational beings calculate odds, assess risks, surrender when defeat is inevitable. But those who hope ignore calculations. They fight beyond logic. They inspire others to do the same." His mechanical hand clenched. "The Emperor understands this. That is why we must crush hope wherever it appears. Not because it is strong, but because it is infectious, like a virus." "Precisely." Alucard considered this. "And what happens when the virus infects the people trying to crush it?" Vader's mask turned toward him sharply. "Explain. You hunt hope. I hunt Force users who believe in it." but we're both infected by proximity. You remember when you believed? I've seen too many people die believing. We're the Empire's weapons against hope, but we carry traces of it inside us whether we admit it or not. I carry nothing except the Emperor's will and the dark side's power. You carry Anakin Skywalker's corpse, Alucard said quietly. Master Shan's words. She knew what you are, someone who killed his former self but can't quite bury the body. The temperature dropped. The viewport's glass cracked slightly from the sudden pressure Vader exerted through the Force. The Dark Lord's breathing accelerated, mechanical rasps filling the observation deck with barely contained rage. You overstep, Vader said, his voice carrying lethal warning. I speak truth. It's one of my few remaining virtues. Alucard met Vader's mask without flinching. You can kill me or try to. You can orbital bombard this ship with me on it. But before you do, ask yourself, why does the truth make you angry if it's not actually true? They stood in silence. Two monsters at the edge of choices neither wanted to confront. The Empire stretched around them, vast and terrible and built on the corpse of the Republic. The Rebellion fought from the shadows, small and desperate, and built on nothing but belief. And these two, one undead, one more machine than man, stood between them. What do you want, Alucard? Vader asked finally, his voice carefully controlled. I want to understand why hope matters. Why beings die for it. Why it survives when everything logical says it should be extinct. Alucard's grin was gone, replaced with something almost vulnerable. I've been a monster for 500 years. I've accepted what I am. But this galaxy is teaching me that maybe acceptance isn't the same as understanding. That maybe there's more to existence than efficient violence. Sentiment is weakness, so you keep saying, but you serve an emperor you probably hate, hunt former allies, and destroy everything you once fought to protect. If that's strength, Lord Vader, it looks remarkably like slavery. The observation deck's viewport shattered completely. Emergency bulkheads slammed down as atmosphere began venting into space. Vader's hand was extended, rage manifesting as raw force power that twisted metal and shattered glass. Alucard stood in the rushing wind, unaffected by vacuum, and smiled sadly. Thank you for proving my point. Before Vader could respond, the vampire dissolved into shadows and vanished, flowing through the ship's systems like darkness given purpose. By the time the Dark Lord's rage cooled enough for rational thought, Alucard was gone, his personal shuttle launching from the hangar bay without authorization, jumping to hyperspace before pursuit could be organized. Vader stood alone in the shattered observation deck, surrounded by emergency crews and the cold vacuum of space, and contemplated what had just happened. The vampire had betrayed him, had abandoned his position, had demonstrated that even weapons could question their purpose. The Emperor would need to know. Alucard represented a security breach, a rogue asset, a creature whose knowledge of Imperial operations made him dangerous. He should be hunted, captured, destroyed if possible, or contained if not. But Vader delayed the report. Just for a moment, just long enough to consider whether the vampire's words carried truth or merely reflected his own suppressed doubts given voice by something that existed outside the Force's influence. You carry Anakin Skywalker's corpse. Hope is infectious. Maybe acceptance isn't the same as understanding. The thoughts were dangerous, weak. Everything the dark side taught him to reject, yet they persisted. Eventually, Vader filed his report. Alucard was declared rogue, his description distributed to Inquisitors and intelligence networks. But the Dark Lord added a private notation. Do not engage unless capture is guaranteed. Subject is too valuable for careless elimination. It was pragmatism, strategic thinking, nothing more. He told himself this as he returned to his meditation chamber, as the familiar pain from his cybernetics washed over him, as the dark side wrapped around his consciousness like a cold embrace. But late at night, in the private moments when even Dark Lords had to face uncomfortable truths, Darth Vader wondered if the vampire had been right, if somewhere beneath the mask and machinery and ruthless efficiency, Anakin Skywalker's corpse still carried a heartbeat he couldn't quite silence. Alucard's shuttle drifted through the outer rim, aimless for the first time since arriving in this galaxy. He'd abandoned the Empire, burned his position with Vader, cut himself off from the most interesting employer and most engaging work he'd found in decades. It should have felt like failure. Instead, it felt like the first honest choice he'd made in centuries. He didn't know what came next. The rebellion wouldn't trust him. He'd killed too many of their people, spread too much fear. The Empire would hunt him now. He knew too much, represented too great a risk. He was alone, truly alone, in a galaxy that didn't know what to make of him. But somewhere in that loneliness, Alucard felt something he hadn't experienced since his original death 500 years ago. Possibility. Maybe he'd keep hunting. Maybe he'd find new employment. Maybe he'd simply drift and watch this galaxy tear itself apart over the question of hope versus power, light versus dark, empire versus rebellion, or maybe impossibly, irrationally he'd choose a side, not because it was logical or profitable or entertaining, but because after witnessing so much courage in the face of certain death, even monsters could wonder what it felt like to fight for something beyond themselves. The thought was uncomfortable, unwelcome, entirely unprecedented in his 5 centuries of existence, and absolutely, undeniably present in the Force, that vast web of cosmic energy binding all living things. A disturbance rippled outward. Not the violent disruption of death, but something subtler. A blind spot beginning to question its own blindness. A void considering whether emptiness was eternal or could be filled. The Jedi would have called it potential for redemption. The Sith would have called it weakness manifesting. Alucard called it annoying philosophical uncertainty that would probably fade once he found something interesting to kill. But deep down, in the parts of himself he rarely examined, the vampire who'd spent centuries embracing his monstrous nature wondered if this strange galaxy had given him something he'd stopped believing possible, a reason to be more than what he was. The future remained unwritten. The war between Empire and Rebellion would rage for years, claiming billions of lives, reshaping the galaxy through violence and hope in equal measure. Whether Alucard would watch from the sidelines or eventually choose to participate remained to be seen. But one truth had been established. The galaxy far, far away had changed him, even as he'd changed it. The blind spot in the Force had developed eyes. The unkillable monster had discovered mortality wasn't the only thing worth fearing. And somewhere, in the shadows between stars, an ancient vampire who'd thought himself beyond transformation learned that even 500-year-old creatures could be surprised by what they might become. The legend of the Void would continue to spread, whispered in rebel cells, classified in Imperial files, debated by Force users who couldn't sense him coming. But the creature behind the legend had begun asking questions that legends weren't supposed to ask. In a galaxy defined by the eternal conflict between light and dark, Alucard had proven something unexpected. There were spaces outside that binary, blind spots where different rules applied, places where even monsters could hesitate before pulling the trigger. Whether that hesitation would save him or doom him remained to be seen. But for the first time in 5 centuries, Alucard found himself curious about the answer, and in a life defined by immortal certainty, curiosity felt remarkably like hope.